What's that smell?
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's just the script.
Welcome everybody to Mousepad. This is your boy Josh. This segment that we're doing is called Lore Dump, and if you saw by the intro graphic, that's a little play on words. But this here is going to be my audience member and co-host.
I'm Alex. Hi.
And me and Alex, we're both nerds. If you ever watched any of our podcasts, we've definitely dived into like Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. But today we're going to be following up because we, on our last podcast, talked about Star Wars, right?
The game specifically.
Like how they're like evolving and devolving, what all happened in the industry there.
And we inevitably like got into talking about the movies like here and there.
Because they do some narrative work on the games because and we're going to get into that. Like, so in Lore Dump, if you can't already tell, this is going to be focusing on lore of IPs, and so when we first do a lore dump on an IP, I'm going to do the first one just like that today is going to be more of a generalization of what most people might be able to figure it out if they just look at the common content of that IP, and then later when we do like, part 2 of this, part 3 of Star Wars, part 4 of Star Wars, I'll dive into more specific things like the origins of the Jedi, the origins of Mandalorians, or what happened during this specific war, or where the hell did Sidious come from, stuff like that.
Yeah, because this is like specifically focusing on like the movies alone, like none of like the extra side stuff. Although we're probably going to end up touching on Clone Wars.
Well, no, it's more, you're right. And that's what I meant is that I'm going to be focusing on what the common content is. And that actually does involve a little bit of TV episodes, right? So that's why I was like, that's the idea. It's not specifically about what was produced, but actually the lore itself, the story. So to start off, every IP that I'm a fan of has had different origins and different development stages. So when you talk about, say, I'm going to say Warhammer 40K, people goes, where did that come from? Well, at one point, there was a game company called Games Workshop in Britain that developed something called Warhammer, which was kind of like their own fantasy, as in like Lord of the Rings-esque, knights, dragons, orcs, the whole 9 elves, the whole 9 yards. And then some people were like, oh man, we want it in space. And so they made Warhammer 40K. And that's kind of how we have to do it with Star Wars. Everything has its own origin of where it comes from. So now, while Star Wars was inspired by old samurai films, yeah, that's true. Even the way they directed some things are actually reminiscent of, like, you can even tell with Darth Vader's attire, he's got kind of a samurai helmet look. It all stemmed originally from George Lucas's head. Now, George Lucas was the director, producer, creator of Star Wars originally, and he's still kicking around at the time of this recording.
And it was originally like technically a space opera, right?
Right.
Which always confused me because they don't sing.
Yeah. Well, so the idea of an opera is not necessarily to sing.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's actually where it gets a little confusing. Like, yes, what most people think of opera, they think of what is known as Italian opera.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now they all do the same thing, which is that belching sing, which is how I first learned how to sing, was actually doing opera, doing Sweeney Todd. And it's more using you're actually using your gut. You're using your actual diaphragm, so you have a lot more air and you're able to bellow more. But it's almost like when you see people doing like talk singing, it's similar to that, but more long notes. And it's more so to convey emotion while telling a story, because back in the day, opera was more so, that was like the original musical, because there would be orchestras, but there was no talking when it came to original like musical plays. Opera started actually being like, well, how can we incorporate this? We can't really talk over an entire like symphony. So we have to actually learn to bellow and talk this story out. And that's how opera actually became around the way it is today. But it's not necessarily, if you have no instrumentation, you can actually just have loud talking. And that's why it's not necessarily singing. It obviously mostly is. But like that's where people get a little confused on that. So that's why when they say space opera, it's like Thor Ragnarok was a space opera. That's actually its classification. Like, yes, does it use modern music? Yeah, absolutely. But the idea is that it's more so a familial slash emotionally engaging journey, right?
Okay.
That tells an overarching story. That's why you have like, oh, there's Greek tragedy, there's Shakespearean drama, and then there's operatic. So it's kind of how you break those down of how those stories, and sometimes they kind of all bleed together depending on who wrote it. We're getting way off track here,
We really are.
but
Back to
you're not
Star Wars.
wrong. It was
Okay.
originally supposed to be a space opera, but became more so a hero's journey, which was Luke Skywalker. We're talking about the original Star Wars Episode 4, and kind of goes like young farm boy stumbles upon adventure, sees an old wise man, grabs a dashing / untrusting rogue, and they go on this adventure to either save the princess or deliver a map or something like that. That story has been done so many times. You can look back, like, I'm talking Bronze Age. This has been used. So it's not like it's a new material. It's always loved. And that's why you have people that criticize new movies saying, well, you took the hero's journey and you twisted it, and now it's no longer a hero's journey, and so it's unrelatable. So originally it was a space opera, which was supposed to be more so a family drama, which anyone who knows the story of Star Wars is like, oh, that adds up. But if you've only seen Episode 4, you're like, that doesn't add up at all. And they were like, well, why don't we not do that? Because that's too much in one movie. Why don't we just make it very simplified? Because they had budget cuts, they had time constraints. Remember, this is before CGI was a thing. Everything was models back then. So a lot of costs and a lot of time, because you're also paying this crew, the actors, the whole 9 yards. And think of logistics of housing, food. Like, they had to bring so much stuff to a desert. And then the next movie, they had to bring so much stuff to a blizzardy location. See what I mean? Like, it's a lot of work to do this stuff back in the day. Now we can actually go to a giant, like, mega studio warehouse and just get fake snow blowing in the air, and then just CGI the environment. So it was going to originally be an opera, and then they did the hero's journey, and then that's why they broke it down instead of just doing one movie. That's the idea of why it became Episode 4, Episode 5, Episode 6, because Lucas was like, I have a great idea, let's break it down. But we're also not doing the entire story, because the story happens from his father's perspective back in Episode 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to release those later, which was the original plan.
Okay, so he had already thought of all of this leading up to the situation.
After the space opera idea died.
Okay.
So, like, because he was going to do kind of, like I said, it was going to be all at once. And it was more so going to be a flashback of, it was almost like a short scene, like almost like imagine you're at the opera theater, only it's, a movie screen. It'd be like all of a sudden the set changes and you hear Ben Kenobi telling the story of what happened to Anakin, only they were going to hide, spoiler alert, they were going to hide that he went to the dark side by more so playing with shadows and like different concepts of what happened, saying Darth Vader killed him, but they're not going to really show it.
Yeah.
That they were going to do that way.
Okay, because
so,
I had wondered about that. I was like, because like I knew that Episode 4 was the first one that like actually came out, but I always kind of wondered, because like I got into Star Wars after like 1, 2, and 3 were made, so I always kind of wondered, like, did they just come up with this backstory to fit what happens, or did he already have that idea like thought out and just didn't make it yet?
Yes and no. Like I said, like he, it's not like Tolkien, where Tolkien thought of everything all at once.
Okay.
Like, he thought of everything. If you don't know who Tolkien is, he's the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings.
But didn't, like, because like the Hobbit movies came out after like the Lord of the Rings like movies, so like did the books as well, and like he went back?
No.
Okay.
So getting a little off topic here, but just to answer your question.
I was just curious. I'm sorry.
No, it's a great question, and I love telling this story. When people ask, well, the Hobbit movies weren't as intense as Lord of the Rings movie, I was like, yeah, there's a reason for that. The Hobbit movies were made as a bedtime story for his children. If you look at the Hobbit book, you're like, how did they make 3 movies out of that?
So he did make the Hobbit, like wrote
First.
the Hobbit before. Okay, gotcha.
Like there's a scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We're going Marvel now, where Bucky is from World War II and was frozen in ice, and he's talking to somebody from our modern era. And so Sam was like, "There's always three villains: androids, aliens, or wizards." And then Bucky goes, "I know what a wizard is." It's like, "How do you know what a wizard is?" It's like, "Gandalf was a wizard." It's like, "How do you know Gandalf?" It's like, "I read The Hobbit when it came out, 1990s." And I'm like, that's a good point. Actually, Bucky was around when The Hobbit came out because it was actually,
Okay.
because so Tolkien actually went into World War One, and that was actually his inspiration for Lord of the Rings.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the whole hero's journey and every character is actually supposed to symbolize a different aspect of both culture and also a soldier's journey. And we'll go into Lord of the Rings, a different lore dump, but it's very fascinating how that all works together on a pseudo-psychological level. But
Gotcha.
Star Wars was originally supposed to be all in one. And when George realized there were time constraints, he started coming up with ideas of how to break this down.
Mhm.
And so he thought that maybe by episode 6, they would just have a big movie and do flashbacks of episode 1, 2, and 3. And that's where you got, like, if you look at how it originally came out, it was Star Wars. And then it was then Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't episode 5, The Empire Strikes
Yeah.
Back. So this was not meant to be broken down into this. And so when people go, "Oh, that's really mean that he did that," I'm like, it's kind of not his fault. He's kind of just
Mhm.
constrained on what he had. And he's not there are certain people that have talents to build worlds. I'm not saying he doesn't have a world building talent, but he does not have the idea of he doesn't have the talent of making a world and then knowing exactly how to tell it all at once. He's more of we'll do it as we get to it. We'll
Like
cross
he'll
the bridge
jump around or whatever.
right. And that's where, like, his wife came into play of, "That's not going to work, George. We need to actually focus in on this one story because people are going to be very jostled if we're jumping around and they can't follow what's going on." And that's when you see when he had complete rights to handle episode 1, it wasn't told the best and it wasn't directed the best. And all I have to joke here is that Samuel L. Jackson still to this day joke, like, he'll laugh. He won't say it himself, but when he hears it, he laughs that the only time Samuel L. Jackson was boring was in Star Wars. Like, look at any other movie Samuel L. Jackson did, and the dude is a character. And Mace Windu, the guy he plays, is the most boring Jedi there is because George doesn't know how to direct. Mark Hamill will talk, and Harrison Ford will make jokes of, "These lines are terrible. We're going to improv this." Like, Harrison Ford pissed off George all the time by changing lines. In fact, one of those famous lines Han Solo even says was improv by Harrison Ford. So you can tell when it's George's writing and when the actors are like, "We're going to change it a little bit and it's going to sound more organic, like what a person would actually say."
So one of my friends who was like, I consider him my first Star Wars guru because like he knows like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and all that. And we've done movie nights. Like we kind of stopped because like situations and whatever. But we would like sit down and we went not even just the movies, but like we were watching everything in chronological order.
Okay.
And I think when we stopped, we had just finished the Obi-Wan series.
Okay.
But like he would always make the joke that Lucas did not know how to write a romance. He's like, this man doesn't know how to write a love story whatsoever.
Yeah, it's very Twilight creepy vibes when Anakin is hitting on Padme. It
Also,
really is.
shout out Corey. What's up, dude?
Shout out Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman for having to go through that. And they joke about it. They're fine with it. You know, it is what it is. They had no animosity on set. It was more so it was awkward.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, jumping IPs again, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man when Gwen, I forgot the actress's name, Emma Stone, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were dating.
Mm-hmm.
So like they had great chemistry on set, right? Like you can like these two are actually like vibing with each other. Like it makes total sense. You see Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman try, it does not work and does not work with that dialogue.
Because it's just awkward the whole time. Like it feels forced up until like they actually like get married, and then it's just
And
weird.
it's great. No, I would. It's weird. It's their vibes are great
Mm-hmm.
in episode 3.
Yeah.
But the dialogue's still not the best if they're talking mushy love, it's
Mhm.
bad.
Like
If
their
they're-
interactions are just
I would say, because I've rewatched so many of these movies, when they're talking about what they're afraid of, it's very organic in episode
Mhm.
3. Like it's very good. Like you could tell these
They care
even
about each
nostalgia
other.
critic, shout out Doug or the guy with glasses. He did a review on it. He's like, Hayden Christensen got a lot of flack for this, like these movies, but if you actually take away the dialogue and you just watch him act without any dialogue, and I'm not saying like mute. I'm saying there are scenes where he does not talk and he's just like showing with expression.
Mhm.
Amazing, and you really get the vibe. Like less dialogue, you see these actors really shine. But like I said, in episode 3, that romance works when you're talking about what their fears are. Why he starts going down this dark path was because of fear.
Yeah.
And not just for himself, but also for Padme and his unborn children.
Mhm.
Child, because he only knew about one. Surprise, twins. So, we had to kind of talk about this whole, like, where all this came from, because it is supposed to be, it's debated of how people should actually watch these. Sam, I forgot the dude's last name, but the guy who voice acts Darth Maul in the Clone Wars saga, he also is he's the character, and he plays the character in Star Wars The Force Unleashed games. He is a consult and a huge Star Wars fan, and he actually says kids should watch the Clone Wars first, like the 3D version, and they fall in love with Anakin, and then they should watch 4, and when they finally get to 5, they'll see the big reveal, and so they'll be like, oh, Vader killed Anakin, we got to stop this guy. And then when they finally get to the big reveal, it actually will hit 1,000 times harder, because they've been able to experience the way that Obi-Wan experienced it, or the way that
traumatize the children
the right way. Yes, absolutely. Because then they know good storytelling. There's a difference. And then stop there. Stop at 5. Don't let them
go back to 1.
Like them watch 1, 2, and 3, and then make them watch 6. So it's even more gratifying when Luke actually saves Anakin's soul. Right? Like I'm like, that is the best way I've ever heard someone describe how you should watch these. Oh my God. Now, if you don't have time to watch the Clone Wars, watch them episode 1 through 6 in order. Okay? You're an adult. You can do them in release order. That's fine.
It jumps around though a lot, the Clone Wars, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes. And that's where there's like online reviews of like what episodes should be focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll even say, like, when you go and search for them now, they'll be like, oh, this is the arc inside the Clone Wars about this section. This is the arc in the Clone Wars about this section.
Gotcha. Because when I watched, we were doing like the Star Wars like movie marathon and like in order and everything, I like opted to not make him go through watching all of Clone Wars with me, because I didn't even make it through all of Clone Wars.
So here's the thing. I would even tell people, not the kids, because I think Sam had a good idea when it came to that 3D, watch the 3D, because that's a lot more kid-friendly, and a lot more story-driven, and has kind of a childlike element, because Ahsoka is Anakin's Padawan.
Yeah.
And she's a little girl. And so you have, the children now have a, what is it called? It's like, the everyman surrogate, when like, this is the person that is experiencing the world like we are. They're learning as we're learning.
Gotcha.
Right? There's a term for it. I'm losing it right now. But yeah, no, Ahsoka plays that role, right? And so that works great. But if you want to do a Clone Wars, if you go back to our podcast, I mentioned there was a cartoon version that's only like 10 episodes.
And it's like drawn. It's
drawn, and in a way, you're seeing more impact of what Jedi can do. But also, they're fast. They're it's like ADD. Like I have a job. I don't have time to watch all these episodes. I want to just do this. I'm like, okay, then watch the cartoon. And strange enough, you're like, oh, the cartoon, is that like more kid friendly? I'm like, no, it's not. It's actually like, especially how emotion is shown, you will see Anakin start being influenced by the dark side a lot harder. And that's actually a really cool way that they show that. He's like, it's always like by protecting out of anger, right? But that's the point of the dark side, is that it corrupts. And so it actually shows him corrupting, and it shows Obi-Wan is sort of aware, but every Jedi kind of goes through this struggle and he will come out of it, is what Obi-Wan was kind of hoping for. but he didn't see fully what was going on because Anakin kept secrets. We, as the audience, know what happens because Anakin is alone doing this and doesn't leave survivors to tell the tale. So it's a double-edged sword there. But yeah, no, if you don't have time to watch the Clone Wars, then watch Clone Wars by, it's the cartoon version. 10 episodes, you're done. And literally at the last episode, you can just jump to episode 3, like the movie, and you're good. So that all being said, Lucas created Star Wars, and then as these movies finished, like I said before, every IP has different iterations of how they get development. This is where I won't say fans took over. It's more so certain game companies and certain publishing, like book publishing services, contacted George because George had not sold it to Disney yet. I was like, hey, we have ideas for this and this. And he was like, let's go over it real quick. And they're like, okay, this is how we want to play it out. And so that's where when someone mentions, oh, these are the Legends books, those are the novels that followed after episode 6 that expanded more on what Luke did. George straight up said, I don't want a movie after Skywalker. I don't want to follow the Skywalkers. That arc is done. If you guys want to write a book on the world after that, that's great. And then they were straight up like, well, I mean, they're not dead. Skywalker, we were planning on him making a new temple, starting the Jedi Academy over again. George's like, that's fine, but don't make him the focus. Make him like this is my word.
Make him like Yoda was.
Yes and no. Kind of. More like a Dumbledore.
Okay.
Like he's so powerful, you can't even have him on screen that often because he would just solve the problems. Right? If you read Harry Potter, you're like, oh, this guy could literally fix everything if Harry was like, this is happening right now, this is what's going on. And Dumbledore was like, okay, I got this. Done.
That's kind of like what I was thinking, like do it as like Yoda, because Yoda was a teacher when he needed to be. He was a badass when he needed to be, and he like stepped in, but he also knew when to step away.
So here's the thing about that, because Yoda, this is a common misconception, and here's some section of lore dump for you. I made fun of Samuel L. Jackson's character. That's actually the master of the Jedi Temple, not Yoda. People always get that wrong. They're like, Yoda's head of the Jedi Order. I'm like, no, he's not. When did they ever say that?
Which
now, don't get me wrong. All the Jedi
sense.
respect the hell out of him.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of like that teacher that gets tenure, but isn't like the dean, but everyone goes to him anyway. It's the same.
It would make sense that like Mace Windu is the one like that would like head everything, because he is the one that like when, spoiler alert, when he's alive, he's the one that steps in and handles things like when they're brought to the attention of the Jedi Council.
Yes, that is, yeah, exactly. But if you were not paying attention, you will still be tricked.
Which Yoda clearly I wasn't.
Good job. I appreciate you. Kudo points to you. But yeah. So George was like, don't focus on Luke. He can just be the teacher figure, the headmaster figure. Focus on other people. That way they have their own stories.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people are mad at the new movies.
That makes sense.
We were supposed to get the books. They were already written. But they're like, no. Kathleen Kennedy's like, no, I can do it myself and not have a plan and just shoot from the hip. So that's why we will not be talking about 7, 8, 9 that much. But now they are canon. So I will be going over some of that just as a lore topic. So, Star Wars. A different day, we will do another lore dump episode where I'll talk about what happens before episode 1. And I'll mention a small little bit here and there just to make things simplified or make things make sense. So if you don't want to learn this way and you want to do it yourself, please skip this video. Come back when you watch the movies. I highly recommend them. If you are like me and sometimes I don't have time for this crap, I want to watch one long YouTube movie and learn the lore so I can have conversations, I got you. So episode 1. So just like in any country, there's eras of civilization, right? Mm-hmm. Think of it this way. The Italy, how we know it today, has gone through 2 different iterations beforehand of their culture. We have the Renaissance era Holy Roman Empire, which came before Italy. And then before that, we had the broken down city states. And then before that, we had the ancient Roman Empire.
Mhm.
So Star Wars is kind of like that, but with more space colonization themes. Not that it's like Earthlings came to this galaxy. No, they never mentioned that Earth is real. Like every Star Wars starts off in like long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Mhm.
You know?
And they also never specify that they're humans.
No, they are.
They are?
Yeah, because they say that essentially Coruscant is where the humans came from.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not specified in the movies.
Okay. That would make sense because I binged the movies.
Exactly. Like, so this is why this is a lore dump, is like, I'm going to be integrating, yes, what the timeline of the movies, but I'm going to be explaining things. So if you have questions, you're like, got it.
And I got plenty of questions. So like, hopefully I'm helping the viewers like understand things that they would wonder as well. So I got you guys too.
So episode 1 starts off just showing this weird two guys in monk robes, like flying through space on a spaceship, going to this space blockade that's guarding a planet. And the space blockade has green alien, classic alien men that are, organizing this. Now, slight off topic, but I'm going to be this is just one sentence. There are some, I won't say racial themes, but cultural themes that were inspirations of some of these characters that can be insensitive to some people. I'm not saying I don't care. It's more so acknowledge it and then get over it.
Like that wasn't the intention.
That wasn't the intention. It wasn't meant to be malicious. Okay. We've seen it where it is. All right. If you want to see where it is, look at 1920s cartoons. Okay. That's where it's bad. But so first questions are like, what are these guys who are in robes? Why is there a trade federation? So George had to kind of wrap this up and be like, how did all this start? Because it's Star Wars, right? Because episode 4 starts in the middle of there's a rebellion against the Galactic Empire. Okay, well, who are the bad guys? The Empire. The government's the bad, right? Well, how do we get there? So that's kind of how we had to kind of not just show the family story, but also the societal story of where that came from. Mm-hmm. Also, the Jedi in episode 4 are all but extinct, right? And what are Jedi? Jedi, in the world of Star Wars, everything in fiction has a gimmick that's unique to it. Star Wars has this Eastern philosophical yet almost atheistic approach to spiritualism, where there's this thing called the Force. And the Force is this metaphysical energy / entity that surrounds all living things and connects everything together on a quantum level. Jedi learn through meditation, peace, and sometimes they're born with extra strength in it, but you can train in it no matter what. But the lowest, like if you have no genetics that help with that and you train a lot, you still can channel it, but it's more so you have faster reflexes. You get the baseline of what a Jedi gets, but you had to work your butt off for it. Like there's a balance there. That's why you'll see some like really good pilots that are aware of Force, because it is a religion. That's why you'll see regular pilots go, "May the Force be with you." It's kind of like a good luck charm. It's their weird pseudo religion that goes with this. This is why some monotheistic religions kind of condemn Star Wars. It's playing on that. Now you can always go, well, they're just, may the Force be with you, may God be with you. It's the same concept, but then you're channeling God and going like, yeah, because I'm willing it, so I'm lifting a block.
And it's so funny because like almost every time I hear "May the Force be with you," part of my brain wants to respond with, "and also with you."
That's fantastic. Sure you didn't go to Catholic school?
My stepdad's Catholic.
Oh, there you go. So before we get started, you kind of need to understand that Jedi are an ancient order that focuses on channeling that Force and being peacekeepers. In this world, yes, bullets exist, but everything mostly is a laser gun. Okay. Now, it's not the traditional laser where it's a long beam you're seeing. Strangely, in Warhammer 40k, they do lasers actually more accurately. But in Star Wars, it's more like a blaster bolt. It's more like a plasma bolt. They just call them lasers. And they disperse their potency, the further it gets away. That's why there's like, you can't just snipe everybody with a laser because lasers would just travel, right? So that's kind of their pseudoscience explanation of it.
Okay, so question, if
Yeah.
that's how it works, then how is a lightsaber able to accurately deflect it? If they're shooting from farther away, then there's more bits of light to deflect, which they can't all get with one beam.
So so this is where it's the more of an artistic expression and less about science. That's why if you want space and science to go together, watch Star Trek. Okay. If you want like societal changes and more of a psychology with not necessarily the best dialogue, that's Star Wars. Star
My
Wars
brain
is
just
more,
wants it to make sense.
and you're not going to. All I can say is that it both makes sense and doesn't. They try to find ways to explain it, but at the same time, they also will say in like at the back of a book, there is a suspension of disbelief here. You have to kind of go with it because in the end, some of it's not going to make any sense. They will make some sense of like, oh, well, the Mandalorians, which is a group of people that don't have lightsabers, they're just people, but they're kind of a warrior race. And they've had to go to war against the Jedi. We'll talk about this at a different lore dump, but they're like, oh, these guys deflect blaster bolts. Okay, so we're not going to use lasers. Eat shotgun shells. Like, yes, they could technically go, we're force stopping it, but it's very hard to do if that level of reaction time to a bunch of shotgun shells, and then like they're stopping shotgun shells, and then another guy just goes, okay, wrist gauntlet flamethrower. Or how about a poison dart that's neurotoxic? See what they did, like, or just straight up a dagger. Like, so they kind of, and then they wore this metal called Beskar that reflects lasers, including lightsaber cuts. So how a lightsaber works, and this will answer your question, but like I just had to give the suspense of disbelief here.
Mhm.
So remember what I said, blasters aren't lasers, they call them lasers, okay? If you really slow down and look at what a blaster bolt looks like, it almost looks like a elongated piece of like overcharged plasma shooting through the air. So it's more so like that. And that's why the excuse is a lightsaber can reflect it because it's condensed and its magnetic field essentially refracts it back on itself 1,000 times over, while one blaster bolt will say, making up a number here, 100 joules of energy, right? With a certain mass that's low. While a lightsaber, it's not like, oh, it's not pure light, because if that was the case, they would be able to swing them ridiculously fast. When it extends out, it actually has weight to it. So there's clearly something there.
Yeah.
And so when it hits, it does reflect off because it is the stronger mass, the stronger energy output. It's just the actual handle emitter takes care of all the mechanics of the device. That's where the suspension of disbelief is because how in the F can you possibly do that in real life? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, because
right?
like you would think like if you can control like the lightsaber through like the handle, why can't you just make it super long?
And that's where they break down some things, but in the end they just say limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Also, so this actually will answer your question. So Jedi, there's a thing with Jedi and there's the opposite, which is Sith. Okay, there's your bad guys, right? We're going to get to the Sith in a little bit. But the idea of Jedi was not, the lightsaber was just a thing. That was not at the start of Jedi. Everyone would like to imagine all Jedi had lightsabers. Actually, no. Originally, Jedi just wielded swords. And lightsabers came around later with the discovery of what's called kyber crystals, which are those crystals that if you focus light into them, they then emit a certain type of plasma, and they can learn to channel that. Well, these Jedi, what makes them special is being able to channel the Force, not just in cool things like I can double jump, I can now wall run, I can now lift things and throw them, I can now see the future. No, it's more so yes, do training in martial arts, like their type of styles, but also you are channeling the Force while doing that. And the Force is almost guiding your hand, and that's why you look so elegant doing it, and that's why you almost look like you never miss deflecting a bolt. It is a mix between faith, martial arts, like key energy channeling. And
it is because the Force is with you.
Exactly. You're joking, but that's actually true. And that's why Sith can block out their force connection to actually make Jedi less versatile in sword combat. And that's why they can actually overpower them, because there's a shadow in the force when they do that. So there's actually a both poetic and logic reason why that all goes together. So there are different styles that these Jedi learned in order to do different things, in order to handle different situations, because they are peacekeepers. And they're more so, what style is this for? Well, if I'm dealing with somebody that I just want to disarm, there's a certain style for it. If this person is deranged and trying to kill me, there's a certain style for it. If there is literally a non-sentient giant alien that is the size of a house that is trying to kill me, that I can't reason with or manipulate through the force, there's a style for it. So these styles kind of represent how they wield their sabers and how they deflect things. And so you ask, why don't they just extend those? Well, they don't extend them because that would mess with the style. They have to train with that specific, because it's not like the force is doing everything. No, they train, they learn. It's more so that force is an added training wheel on top of it. And so they still have these martial arts styles. It's like if I took my staff here, I know how to wield a bow staff. If you're like, okay, do with the same thing with the quarterstaff, which is that staff times 2. I wouldn't know how to do that. I'm dead serious. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. If you told me to wield Sting from Lord of the Rings, which is like a Roman gladius, like a katana, I can't do that. So it's the same concept of why do you have different sabers and why you have different saber looks. Because one time you had a question down the road, we'll talk about that, of Kylo Ren's saber.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren's saber is actually 1.5 feet longer than normal sabers, but his is what's called a broadsword saber.
Yeah.
So it's wielded almost like a French knight, okay, or a German knight. So there you go. That kind of answers your question there.
Okay. And don't worry, my sweet little chili babies. I got another lightsaber question coming on like down the line, so we'll get there.
You're holding out all that mass that's also fighting against you. It's the same concept, right?
Okay.
And then lastly, what we talked about before is that the styles have certain nations. So like the longest lightsaber is actually, technically speaking, the dual saber, which is a
Kylo Ren's.
No, not Kylo Ren's.
No.
Kylo Ren's is the longest when it comes to single blade.
Yeah, you're talking
the
about
longest one is Darth Maul's, right? And those are, in Jedi terms, those are usually used for defensive, what's called the Guardian class. And then people ask, well, what about the colors? I'm like, there's a lot of theological debates, like in metaphysical debates about that. And
except Samuel Jackson just said, I want purple.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. If you notice that Samuel only has the only purple one, and he's like, can I have a purple saber? And they're just like, sure. Which is great and just fits his, like, I wish that type of mindset went into his dialogue. Like, that's just would have been so much more entertaining, is that you have the same guy who's in Pulp Fiction training little kids.
So speaking of color, because like the other ones are like, aside from like the Sith and everything, they're all like green or blue. Is there like some way to decide who gets green and who gets blue, or do they also choose?
So that has changed throughout time. I'll break this down really fast. Originally, it was more so blue represented almost like a police officer, while green represented more of, I have more of an understanding of the natural order of things. Like
okay, because initially I was like assuming it was probably like Jedi Masters versus Padawans, but yeah.
Actually, the difference, well, one, a Padawan that's on the field with their master has the same type of lightsaber as their master.
Okay.
It's a full lethal lightsaber, right?
Yeah.
Little kids have something called a training lightsaber.
A little zapper.
Yeah, essentially is like a bug zapper.
Mm-hmm.
And it can, the funny part is it actually still deflects lasers. So that, like, it is completely canon that a youngling, if he got shot at by a droid, could totally defend himself.
Because there was like one when who was it? I think it was Obi-Wan saw like the last like little like youngling that was defending, and that ended up getting shot.
It was a senator who saw that.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, and you saw him actually deflect blaster bolts.
Yeah.
Now, there was once a time where we said blue blaster lasers hit harder but use up more energy consumption. But then that was just more so a fan theory, and it turned out like because of video games came out and stuff like that, it's because when droids got hit with blue lasers, it almost looks like they got hit by a truck. While when a droid shoots a trooper, it's like he got hit in the shoulder by a 22 caliber, right? So it just, because the aesthetic of the impact of how it looked, it was theorized that Blue Blaster's lasers did more. So how it actually happens, what's canon now, both by books and also the new games, is when you go find a Kyber crystal, which is like it's a Jedi's passive right. Like when they start training, they're just given a saber, right? But when they actually go through the training to be a Padawan in the field, right? When they've earned the respect enough to be like, okay, we trust that you're not going to screw up enough if you also have a master with you, and you can actually get separated by your master temporarily and you'll be fine. We need to give you something actually able to do stuff. You're representing the order, so it's kind of like take your kid to work day as a police officer, but you have to give the kid a gun. So like it's that kind of level of crazy. But remember, these kids have been training since they were a baby, right? Anakin is an exception. If you watch the movies, he's like 8. And that is
because all of the younglings are like little kids, like elementary school.
Yeah, no, 100%. And those kids have actually been training, like
For
they grew up
years.
in a nursery. Like they started this very young. And the Jedis, which are called Seekers, go out, and when they will sense force sensitive children, and they essentially will not kidnap. I love how everyone says they kidnap kids. I'm like, no, they don't.
They talk to the parents.
It's more so they give a giant stipend to the parents, or it could be something as simple of, oh, your whole family is stuck on. Bad example because it's completely fake, but I'm going to give what should have happened in episode 1, because it wasn't canon yet, and in episode 1 they did not do it properly, but they just kind of went with it. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, this is why reshoots and rewrites are a thing. No, in lore now, what's supposed to happen is when Jedi sense a force sensitive child, if the family is like, okay, if the family is toxic and bad, they're just kidnap the kid. That's true. That's 100% true. But these are like bad people at that point. But if they're like a good people and maybe they're in a bad situation, they're like, hey, you want to like get on my ship and get out of here, and we'll just resettle you somewhere else. Like you can never see your kid again. Like they never will settle the family in Coruscant. One, way too expensive, and you'll wind up in the slums, and you're just as bad as you were before. So they'll like take you to one of the what's called core worlds, which is near the galactic core, that are more settled and civilized, and that's kind of how that all happens. But if they're all like, say they find a baby on a core world, then it's more so we will give you a huge amount of Republic credits. You're having issues with like you're a like trade family, and like a lot of your ships are under huge super maintenance. Let's just go ahead and do a stipend to give you all new ships.
And it really sucks that that wasn't already canon for episode 1, because they would have just been able to also buy his mom out of like slavery.
Yes. And so here's the thing about that. I say that that's not how it's done, but there was a reason that they wrote in to make it make sense. And if you actually know this reason and then watch episode 1 again, you're like, yeah, they really did their homework and made sure it all made sense. Tatooine is controlled by the Hutts. People don't quite understand how dangerous the Hutts are. The Hutts are an alien family that are gangsters. I mean like mafia. And I don't mean...
Which the Clone Wars like animated like kind of goes into that a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah. They like had like a missing kid and everything. It was great. Whenever the Hutts are involved, I'm immediately more entertained. I love when the Hutts are involved. Because it's just like, yeah, we have, you know, these monks in robes that can deflect lasers, and we have billions of clones fighting against billions of robots. But sure, one of the most interesting things is let's recreate the mafia with giant aliens that look like slugs. I'm like, come on, that's hilarious. But they're also terrifying by what they do. So the Hutts don't just control a territory. They don't just control a planet. So if you look at the galaxy, it's almost like looking at a donut. All right. And the core is where that donut hole would be. And like, it's the further out of the core you get, the less influence of the Republic you have. And the Republic is synchronized with the Jedi. Like, bar none. Like, when the Jedi were created, the Republic was also created. That's essentially how it went. Like, it's more complicated than that for anyone that knows the lore and going, like, that's not true. I'm like, I'm making it simplified. But the Outer Rim is what that's called. That's why you'll hear that reference. No backup. no backup. Like Jedi will go
Or
missing.
like the Hutts, like
Like the hut,
okay,
like not just the Hutts. It's like you got multiple mafia families that control things.
okay.
And so to actually try and get Smee, which was her name, Anakin's mom, out of there, one, okay, you have to understand this also. Jedi are not murderers. They are very at peace, so they always will try 100% to do the peaceful option, and they will never do a violent act unless it is 100% necessary for the life of someone else. Smee, though she is a slave, she has housing, she is fed, she's not abused physically. She's not. It's very canon that like whatever his name was, Grotto, whatever his name was,
Yeah.
he did not physically like hurt his slaves. It's more so if a slave tries to want to run away, they'll just be killed, which is horrible. I'm not saying that's good, but there's a difference of like degrees of bad, right? And so Qui-Gon's like, I can't really interfere with this. He's refusing payment. He's refusing that gamble that he did. I can only get the kid. And so I kind of had to make an exception. So it does make sense. It's just, you bring up a good point. Like, why don't they just, to make Anakin's life a lot easier, send a huge, well, because they can't. It's because the Hutts would interfere. They also have a certain code. It's not like they're also Sith. This changes when Luke Skywalker takes over the temple, and it's like, yeah, forget the code. If we see problems, don't go dark, but don't also like don't commit straight up murder, but also, you know, free the slave.
If you need to, you gotta.
Yeah, if you that's literally the Jedi order, is like if you need to, you got it. It's like it's only if you need to. So Qui-Gon did not need to free Smee.
Okay.
And so that's why that, like, if she was being tortured, he'd be like, oh yeah, this is a just cause. I can, with my code, fight for this. Yes, she's a slave. Yes, that's horrible. But is she immediately in danger? No. In fact, is she even in long-term danger? No, she's not. So he was like, I got my hands tied. I can't.
It's just like,
I'm already breaking the rules by getting an 8-year-old. I know that's actually part of the first movie. Is like Yoda was like, "You're old. Like you brought this kid to us. He's old. He's like saying an 8-year-old is old is weird, but like it in their world makes sense. And so he's already pushing it. In fact, he already had a Padawan, which was Qui-Gon, and he's like, I want to take this kid under as my Padawan, which the kid has not gone through any training at the academy. So there's a bunch of rules he's already breaking. He can't also go, oh yeah, I also kidnapped the slave from the Hutts.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And I had to kill people and I didn't need to. He would be ostracized, excommunicado, like that. He would be so gone. He knew that.
It's just like, it gives like, because like, I'm an overthinker. So like, I think about how like, because I understand that the Force was greater in Anakin than it was in other Jedi, but even Anakin, like he had those visions of Padme dying during childbirth.
Yes.
So he was able to like predict these things that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And
in fact, he predicted Smee actually was suffering, and that's why he went back to Tatooine.
Yeah, he's like, I sensed something with my mom, and he went and checked, and it was right before she died.
And do you know why that actually, like, see, that's the funny part, is that's why there's an age restriction. Is because you have ties with, like, people who even have basic memory problems can still remember when they're 8 years old. Right? And they have connections to the people that raised them at 8 years old. So Anakin had ties to his mom. It's not like he's like, I get these strange visions of some woman. No, he knows it's his mom. He knows that, like, he is emotionally and spiritually connected to his mom, and that is why he has visions of it. And that's why.
Is that like the same thing for Padme though?
It is.
Okay, because like I was thinking, like part of me was like wondering if Anakin could have those visions and that foreshadowing, then why couldn't Qui-Gon have the same thing? Because if he had gotten, because like that makes more sense. Because if he had gotten Shmi like out of slavery, she wouldn't have died, and Anakin wouldn't have gone down this dark road.
You're absolutely right. But here's the fucked up part: Shmi didn't die from slavery.
Yeah. Well, she was in the position where she died because of her position in slavery, right? No. Because she was with Grotto?
No. She was bought out by her husband. She was bought out and freed.
Yeah.
And then started a family on Tatooine. And then she got kidnapped by raiders. It had nothing to do with slavery.
Okay.
Like Qui-Gon said, she's going to be fine. He has
Okay.
good, like, Jedi have, like, you gotta understand,
Reminded me
you
of
are
stuff.
channeling the quantum verse of reality through you using the Force. And so that is why they like say no emotional ties to people. You have to be monk. Like that's why there's a monk-esque to them, is that they really do have to cleanse themselves that way, or else it will. There, it's not that when they say the dark side of the Force will corrupt you, that's actually in you. Like it's the potential of it in you. It's the desire for power. It's the fear of loss. It's you actually not being able to let go of things that actually ties to the dark side, right?
Okay.
So that's where all this actually gets confused, and people go, well, because you're not giving bad questions. It's more so it's not explained very well how this dark side of the Force comes.
And that's why I have so many questions.
Yeah. If you actually watch more lore on from like video games perspective, you will actually see the dark side being better shown in video games ever than any sort of movie or TV.
Okay.
Because you see it's actually because of fear and the fear of loss or isolation. It really is from that.
It's the emotion behind it.
It's the emotion behind it. And here's where we get to the fun part. You're like, how do kyber crystals come around to being colors? Well, when you, we full circle here. When you go as a Padawan to get your kyber crystal, to actually get a real lightsaber, to build your own, it's a tradition, the crystal will call to you. Now, this was done in the Clone Wars show, but it's also done in some video games, right? In that new game I told you about, Fallen Order, you do it too. Because the first saber you're using is your master's.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's why it's only blue or green. And then when you finally go pick up your own kyber crystal, you can change whatever color you want. It's really cool.
Because, like, I was thinking about that. Because, like, I know, what is it, Universal? Or is it actually at Disney World? Where
at Disney, because
Disney, but they have like you can build your own lightsaber, and so that would make sense that like you pick whichever stone like you want because that's whatever calls to you,
right? But
so
that's a fan thing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like there's a difference between like, oh, I want to play a video game where I do my Jedi power trip, so I want to pick whatever color I want. That's not how it works. In canon lore, you don't pick your color; it picks you. It's honestly, weirdly enough, Harry Potter does a good job of saying like the wand chooses the wizard. It's the same concept, right? Okay. Now, what style you choose, that's up to you.
Yeah, because like the outer shell is like always different in the way it's portrayed.
Right, because that's more about that. So the shell the shell betrays the Jedi's personality, but the color betrays their soul.
Okay.
Yeah, I like how they show that. And that's why red is always red, because when you actually watch how it's made, it's called bleeding. Your crystal it's not like Sith go, I'm going to go find a red crystal. No. It's that they have a lightsaber crystal that is a normal color, and the dark side will
blood into it.
Crystal, and it will bleed, their pain will bleed into the crystal, and it will turn red.
Bro, I want to see one in transition.
Play Jedi Survivor. You get to see it.
Oh.
It's pretty dope. It's pretty cool. Like, yeah, I'm a good guy at heart, but like, that was a cool animation. How they showed that transition from like a Jedi falling to the dark because of pain and loss. His crystal also changed from blue to like started flickering orange, and it just like cracked a little bit and then went red, and it almost looked like red ink shot into it, like blood corrupting a stone. I was like, oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
I love that.
It's really neat. So that's how these kids get the crystals, and that's where the color actually derives from. It's more so traditional. And if you now, here's the thing, I'm always going to say this, especially with Star Wars. Yes, we have canon stuff. Yes, we have stuff where it's like we have dictate that this is ordained, but where did it come from? Technological limitations by making the movies. That was really it. Like, what was an easy color for us to render CGI wise? Bright blue and bright green and bright red. Okay. Well, if the bad guys are all wearing black, what is foreboding on black? Red. Right? What is enlightening or lively? We have someone wearing earthy tones, like Yoda. He has a green saber, right? Or we have someone wearing like light white and like hazel tones. We can have a blue saber, and that kind of that's more of just, if you study film and photography and art, you'll see how that color grading works together. Like I said, you have stuff where you're like, oh yeah, this is lore, but it came from technical limitations.
Yeah, like I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the original 3 where you could like I could tell something was like clay animation, like stop and go, because of the way it fell over. It wasn't like organic, like it went a little bit and then like too much.
Yeah,
And
it's whenever
I
they
just
do
thought
large
that was
objects.
cool. Like I appreciated that.
It's the AT&T, the AT-ATs, the walkers on the second movie. So episode 5, and then you have the Rancor from episode 6 and the short walkers.
Yeah, I want to say that what I'm thinking of is from episode 6 when they were in like the frozen area, and it was like I want to say it was like a creature that was walking and it fell over, and I think it was like something that Luke was with, if I'm not mistaken.
There was no frozen area in 6. You're thinking of 5.
I am probably.
That's
Yeah,
Hoth.
I am. I was thinking 5, 6, 7. I don't know why I wasn't thinking 4, 5, 6, but yeah. Yeah. It's the frozen world.
Some of it was
and it was something
puppetry,
that
some
fell
of it's
over.
claymation. You're absolutely right. And I think what you're thinking of is the Tauntaun, which was their steeds that was done.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Because they have to do stop motion, you know, because it's kind of hard to do that organically when you're doing just a prop that you're on top of and showing that, like, how would something organically fall over like that? That doesn't exist in our world. So we have to make different models for it and have it fall over and do stop motion camera shots. So, and I always appreciate old photography in its own way because they had to do all those kind of things. Now we can just CGI render it, right?
Mm-hmm. And it seems like half like because like they put so much like work into it, and like I feel like it makes me appreciate it more.
So this should have been part of the podcast, but I'm just going to say this briefly, is there's some parts where George would go back and add CGI that's hated, and there's some parts that's loved. So a good example of what is hated is when this is episode 4 Tatooine, they added a bunch of CGI extra stuff that took up a lot of the screen and didn't really let you see what's going on because he wanted it to feel more like a lively city. But when you did that, you took up a lot more of the actual shot itself, and so you can't really see what's happening with the characters going to the bar.
Okay.
Now, on the flip side, when in episode 4 you had the last space battle.
Oh, you're talking about like the little like music bit, aren't you? Where like they're singing at the bar.
I'm talking about going.
I'm
talking about when they're first going into Mos Eisley, the town.
Oh, where they see like gotcha. That's where
they get stopped by stormtroopers, and Ben goes, "This is not the droids you're looking for." That area.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, where that's loved is actually in that scene. These are not the droids you're looking for because they added those creatures in the background, not the foreground. So when you put them in the foreground, it kind of ruined the shot. When you put them in the background, it makes the city more lively. So it's both loved and hated. Hated and loved. You get what I mean? But when they did the space battle, they added more ships in the background fighting, which gave more of a, this is like an active space battle. Before they didn't do that, it was very like we were only able to do so many models and do so many shots doing this. And so it kind of limits what we can do. And also doing like little bright flashes of laser pointers to kind of illustrate blasts coming here. But now we have more CGI. Let's add more lasers in the air. Let's add these ships in the background behind the clay models that we actually did.
Like give it the menacing effect that we wanted it to have.
Make it feel like an actual giant war fight, right? It's Star Wars. And if you watch the original cut, it really does feel like it's 8 fighters versus like 10. It doesn't feel like much. It's not bad because it's shot with a lot of energy, so you kind of just ignore that. But now that you actually add more stuff into the background and more fire and more lasers, it does actually feel like, oh no, it's not just a dogfight. They're also an entire landmass filled with guns. So it kind of adds a level to the scariness of it. So that's kind of the up and the down of it. When George was like, when CGI really came around was in episode 1. And that's when he started seeing the idea of creating these whole alien worlds. Because before he would even make fun of it. What's the alien world? Well, it's frozen. What's the alien world? Well, it's a jungle. What's the alien world? Well, it's a desert. You know, like that's all he can really do because they were limited. And then you look at Naboo, which is this beautiful scape that does not look like anywhere on Earth because it isn't on Earth. It's 100% CGI rendered, and you can barely tell.
Mhm.
Let's do Coruscant, a planet that is a city. You cannot make that normally,
Yeah.
right? So that's when he was like, now we can go back and do those movies because that's where all these take place,
Okay.
right? So, like I said, every lore dump is going to be different. This one, I have to constantly go back to the technical side of all this because that's actually why this all came around the way it did. It was limitations, right? This is not like Warhammer where it's mostly books and barely any animation at all. This was mostly animation and then later became books and later became lore and then went back to animation,
Mhm.
right? So now that we've gotten all that out of the way with an entire hour of filming,
Again.
yeah, now that that's all out of the way after an hour, let's actually break down the lore of it other than like Jedi. So now that you kind of understand that there's a galactic republic, there's an outer rim, there are these weird Jedi knights that are walking around as peacekeepers. That's actually what they're made for, as they are meant to kind of be a neutral. Imagine, if you will, like with the U.S. government as the example, the FBI was not a government entity, but a nonprofit organization that people volunteered to. And they kind of helped resolve issues throughout different local governments. That's the best way I can give an example.
They just got a little special something in their blood.
Right. Yeah, because remember, the reason why Jedi have negotiating power is not because they can hurt you with the Force. It's that anyone who, like, if the Jedi show up, think of it this way: you got Alpha faction and Bravo faction arguing, and every now and then there's a little bit of fighting, maybe some gunfire, and then they go back to like Cold Warring it, right? And then the Jedi show up. Both of them are going to be like, crap, because once whoever opens fire first, the Jedi can target because they're like, oh, self-defense. But the Jedi aren't going to go there and just attack whoever because they disagree with them. It's whoever is being aggressive. And so it stops factions from being super aggressive because they know we're not going to piss off the Jedi because, yes, an entire army can kill a Jedi, but at the same time, these Jedi are probably around the negotiating table. And so if someone pulls out a blaster and shoots at someone, the Jedi's going to block it and deflect that blaster bolt back at the shooter. So it kind of just immediately stops any sort of hostile negotiation or almost strong arming, right? And that's why they're originally sent. And so if you watch episode 1, they don't ever get to the negotiation page. They actually get gassed, like sleep gas, and their ship gets blown up because they're like, that wasn't part of the plan. In fact, we can't even let go of negotiations. We just have to go. So we just have to move forward. And it is hard to hear the aliens sometimes. I recommend turning on subtitles. So here's what's going on. I mentioned the Sith before. The Sith, you're not going to get this in the movies, but the Sith were around almost, I'd say 1,000 to in between 1,000 to 10,000 years after the creation of the Jedi. And that's a whole different thing, right? And this is like 100,000 years in the past. The Sith are a group of Jedi that decided, well, instead of being all meditative, why don't we just go in, like dive into our passions, and we use that dark energy and that fury to gain power. And that's why the dark side is always shown to be more efficient. But that's like saying, I have a sword, but if I wanted to be more efficient, I could throw a grenade at you. Right? Is that more efficient? Define efficient.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to happen.
Right. If you just want to get rid of the problem, yeah, sure, the grenade works great, but you're not going to ever have negotiating abilities. And also, everyone's just going to look at you like the dude who threw a grenade. So, while the guy with the sword, if someone argues and comes at your partner, you can defend yourself with that sword. And people are going to be like, fair enough. I mean, that was terrible, but I mean, yeah. So that's a simplified version of Jedi versus Sith and dark side versus light side. Light side of the Force is peace, balance, but it's, if you want to like do a video game representation of like how this balances, because I'm going to tell you some dark side powers, and you're be like, yeah, that seems kind of unfair. light side, meditation. And you're like, can't the Sith meditate? No, they're too angry. I'm literally not kidding. They are too angry. They can't focus. Their idea of meditation is brooding, and they can just focus on a problem, but they're not meditating, right? It's like hyper focusing on something.
Mhm.
While let me move my mic down a little bit. While when a Jedi meditates, they can actually, you know, like you said, Anakin was able to see his loved ones hurt.
Mhm.
That's a dark. That's like he's not dark side, but that's the dark side creeping into his light side ability, right? It's his
Okay.
passion and connection and fear of loss. It's his fear going into what is a light force power, which is the ability to see the future.
So so I'm backing up a little bit. So Qui-Gon, he knew that Anakin was a Jedi of prophecy, that he was prophesized about.
Right. Well, he
So-
theorized he's the chosen one, but he
Mhm.
knows for a fact the kid is supercharged.
Gotcha. Because, like, I'm wondering, like, if that is a dark side ability, then who prophesized it?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You might have been a little confused. That's my fault. Being able to see the future is a light force ability.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
That's why a
Because you
Jedi
said
has
that
the
was the
prophecy.
dark side creeping in.
It's his fear of the dark side of loss creeping in that goes into it because he's not full dark yet.
Okay.
Because there's a thing called fallen Jedi. When a Jedi falls to the dark side, they're not full of Sith yet because Sith needs to train you.
Okay. So they both have, like, both sides have an ability to see into the future,
No.
but what? So then who
This is what I'm trying
prophesized
to-
about
this
the
is what I'm trying to
chosen
say.
one?
It's more of a corrupting factor. So this light side ability is very pure, and if you can make sure it stays pure, it can do all these great things, right? This is why they get babies, not Anakin as a toddler.
Yeah.
So because of his fear of loss, his light side ability to see the future is corrupted because he's afraid. It's not
So that's why he sees the people like that he loves like dying. and
exactly.
that's-
It's still
okay.
future sight,
Okay.
but as Yoda says, that could still it's badly portrayed, but Yoda tries to explain it. This could be a gift so that you are not caught off guard when they die.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the idea of it. It's like it's up to interpretation.
So Yoda's still hopeful that it's not the dark side creeping into Anakin.
Right. Because the dark side creeps in
Like
them,
he's rationalizing it.
and Yoda so Yoda is more aware of Anakin than even Obi-Wan.
Okay.
It's more so it's all about choice. And he knows Anakin is good at heart. It's not like this kid is evil,
Yeah.
right?
He's doing what he can.
But the Force makes you whatever emotion you're feeling is amplified.
Okay.
Okay. So that's why when you have a Dark Force user like we're jumping around here a little bit, but on purpose, Luke Skywalker then goes, no, you can use the dark side, but you need to actually know where it's coming from and be completely knowledgeable about it so you're not caught off guard when it tries to corrupt you. That's why
When
later
does he
Jedi
say
can use
that?
Force Choke. That's why later Jedi can use Force Lightning
When does he say that?
in
Like
the
when?
Legend books.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, see how like they really screwed that up?
Because, like, I'm even thinking about, like, later on when he comes back, like, to, like, basically be raised Jedi Master, that, like, he's very, like,
Standoffish.
evil. Like, he has, like, an evil aura to him at some
That's because
point.
he has such a loss. He knows he needs to isolate himself.
Okay.
And here's the thing. I don't like how they did Luke in that movies. Mark Hamill doesn't like how Luke was done in those movies. Here's where Luke was at his peak, episode 6.
Okay.
Luke was at his peak in episode 6 because one, he talked like a Jedi, he was controlled like a Jedi, and it was showing what was seen in the books later because if you look at how he enters Jabba's palace, 2 guards show up and he just straight up force chokes them out.
Oh.
Yeah. He doesn't lift them up and torture them with it. He's like, you are
Yeah.
going to lose air and you're going to pass out. But that's force choke. That's a dark
Then-
side power. But he controlled it. He didn't let it
because
consume
he was very
him.
more willing to, like, embrace the abilities, like, in 6.
It's more so he's aware of it now. And so he's like, okay, so as long as I know what's going on and I just stay calm about it, I can tap into it.
Which is why he finally decides to try to strike down Palpatine. That explains. Okay.
Palpatine was corrupting him.
Yeah.
Palpatine was trying to goad him into falling
Yeah.
completely into the dark side.
but he still had like his wits about him, for lack of a better phrase.
Until he met Palpatine. There was a small section where Luke
had doubts.
He fades out in front of Palpatine. And that's where actually he cuts off Vader's hand. And that's what snaps him out of it, is that he saw the parallels of him and his father. And he's like, I'm not going to do this. And that's why he throws away the lightsaber. He's like, you lost. You can kill me, but you still lose.
So wait, because like I forgot about that part. Did he cut off the hand that was already robotic?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So like that's why it shows. It's a really cool like way that they reveal it, because at this point you don't know what is behind all this.
The glove, and yeah.
It's only when you see episode 3 at the end of that you're like, oh yeah, that's okay, that makes sense. And then you see him actually get equipped, and you're like, oh, that looks painful. He's essentially a cyborg.
At the end of 6 that you actually like he shows him as a vision to see Anakin when he was younger.
Yeah, which in the podcast, go check that out. We talked about the difference of actors and all that.
Yeah.
But when Luke cuts off the hand, it shows that it's not organic, it's robotic.
Okay.
And that's why when Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan, said he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. That's both a metaphor and true.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so Luke has a hand cut off because his dad cut off his hand. And so he has a robotic hand.
Yeah.
And so when he sees the wires of Vader's hand that's cut off, he also looks at his hand and goes, oh, I see. Okay, I see where this is going. This is literally trauma. This is generational trauma repeating. And anyone who knows psychology is going to appreciate I just said that. It is literally generational trauma that Luke goes, nope, not doing it. He tosses away his saber and goes, you can kill me, but you're not winning. You're not converting me. You lost. And that's him being a true Jedi. And that is the only time Sidious goes, so be it, Jedi. And that's both an insult and also respect.
Kudos.
You got to think, these are clans that have been at war for hundreds of thousands of years. And so to actually like call you a Jedi, he's like, that
instead of like rebel
you're
scum
pretending
or
to be a
something.
Jedi. You are actually a Jedi. Congratulations. Like I hate you, but so be it, Jedi. Like I hate you, but at the same time, yeah, you're a Jedi. So it's kind of like that weird I hate you, but also respect you.
Gotcha.
That came from Sidious.
Because like honestly,
And
like
you also
like I had to remind myself that his hand got cut off because they just represented it as him wearing a glove.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets funny because
of like the technological advancement.
yeah,
like
in the
capabilities.
lore, some things got improved, some things went backwards. So yeah, it's funny that way. But also to kind of like give a final note on that, notice how Palpatine only uses lightning on Luke once he calls the Jedi.
Oh.
He doesn't get involved until Luke, he just straight up goes, oh, this is actually a Jedi. This is not someone I can corrupt. I'm going to fry him now. So yeah, back to powers. Jedi, there's what's called core abilities, which is just core force using. So the ability to move objects, the ability to have faster reflexes, the ability to reduce damage. Sounds a little silly, but like I'm not going to go into that. Just say that it reduces the like you could go, oh, well, that's because, they wanted to show, more cinematic stuff. Sure, but it's now a lore. They reduce the damage they take, right? So they can jump off tall heights. They can, get hit a little bit. And what normally would break bones gives them a bruise, right? So that's core abilities that everyone gets. The light side or the Jedi get meditation, the ability to see in the future, fast reflexes. Because there's the big ritual meditation, but there's also the I am learning to channel the force and just being fast.
Mm-hmm.
And Sith get a little bit of that, but that comes from their original training, but then they leave that. And that's why you can that's why Sith win saber combat by doing one of their abilities, which is shadowing the force, which is actually breaking connection, which takes away your reflexes that you usually rely on. Right. And so other light abilities is healing. They can literally not heal others, but they can have massive wounds and actually just meditate and literally heal without Bacta, which is the first aid gel that Star Wars uses in order to heal people. It's used in all of its mediums, so you'll like see it happen every now and then. Is that you'll see back to tanks or back to syringes, and that's their first aid. But Jedi can just like it's a hard power. This is like actually a difficult one because healing is not easy, period. But Jedi can just be like, oh man, I got like burned all over my like right side down. Hold on, I'm just gonna meditate, and then like after 2 hours, they're like, okay, this is scabbed over, and then they sleep, wake up, meditate again, and then it's fully healed. Like that's from like a trauma that would take months, maybe years to fully heal, right? Or a month in a back to tank, right? So like that's a Jedi thing. Also, the ability to manipulate others. While that sounds crude, it is Jedi because remember they're all about non-violent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not I'm mind controlling you.
It's I'm influencing you.
It's more so changing perspective. Because think of how it's worded when they go, these are not the droids you're looking for. I mean, technically that's a lie, but also at the same time, you don't want to be looking for these droids. This is going to cause you more trouble. So it's more so the concept of let's avoid the combat. Okay?
Because, like, so what is it about the Force that makes that only work on weak-minded individuals?
So think of it this way, and also try to bring in other IPs that you've seen. In fantasy, it's always like highly intelligent wizards and stuff like that have great control over magic. Mm-hmm. So let's break that down. Instead of it being magic, let's say it's the quantum universe channeling through all of space and time. So everyone is able to wield the Force. That's why it's a general religion, right? But if it's wielded against you, then you need to have certain resistances. Mm-hmm. So if you're really weak-minded, which means you don't do mental exercises, you don't expand your mind, you're
not going to be able to get a grasp on it.
Right, because it's not that you won't be able to get a grasp on it, is that you can literally have your perception changed through quantum mechanics by someone just being able to manipulate your neurons just a little bit.
So it quite literally just goes...
Literally, it's literally like moving things over someone's head. Absolutely. So what is the opposite of non-aggression is aggression. So some of these might seem not that dangerous, but kind of freaky. Trust me, it gets bad. Sith abilities. Everyone and their mother knows Sith lightning, Force lightning. Right? It's famous because one, Palpatine did it, and then in episode 2, Count Dooku did it. And it's pretty much if a Sith user is strong enough in the dark side and they don't have an augmentation, as in they don't have a mechanical body part. Because you can't, that's why Darth Maul doesn't do it when he comes in later. Because he has metal augmentations.
Where?
In the animated Clone Wars. And that CGI Clone Wars.
Oh. Well, I didn't realize part of him was robotic.
Yeah, his legs. Oh. Dude, he was cut in half. Obi-Wan cut him in half.
Oh, he comes back.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't really get through Clone Wars.
Yeah, no, that's when it gets good. When the moment Maul is reintroduced is when the story kicks off.
Oh.
Yeah, that you need to like. That would be something that you should watch by yourself and like enjoy that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's great, and honestly, it makes you appreciate. It's like there's a rivalry between Obi-Wan and Maul that's not just twisting mustache. It's literally like I
watched you kill my master.
You, then you wrong me, then I wrong you, then I want you. Like eventually Maul kills Obi-Wan's love interest. Like straight up murders her. Yeah, like so it is deep. It actually and it ends beautifully. And I'll talk about this some other time, or I'll send you the link of Sam, that guy I told you about, actually breaks down that scene. Because remember, he voices Maul.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so he knows about that whole scene. He directed it. It was a whole, like, oh my God, it's perfect. It's a beautiful scene.
I'm excited.
So, let's get back to it. Sith powers. One, you swing harder, period. Like, I missed one Jedi power. I apologize. Speed. Oh. So everything will appear slower to you, but in reality, what everyone else is seeing is you all of a sudden turning into the Flash minus the lightning. Right, you're moving through space and time. The Force is guiding you. You feel me? It's a passive. I'm avoiding this fight. Okay, so what's the aggressive version of that? Slow. You slow someone else down. Remember, it's encroaching on somebody's freedom.
So
it's encroaching on their aggression.
Is it like an equal trade where they just turn them normal?
Oh, if a Jedi is going fast and a Sith goes
Yeah.
slow,
Yeah.
it's not
just
really
equal
shown
out.
very often. It's just like, it would cancel out.
Okay.
Yeah. So most of the time, slow is used on people that aren't using Force. It's like when you're dealing with speed, it's just easier as a writer to make it simplified and to have weaker people dealing with it. So, for instance, the first scene you see Kylo Ren, he straight up uses slow on a laser bolt, which is
Yeah, and
stupidly
just,
strong.
like, go past it.
Yeah, that was stupidly strong,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not just stopping. You're like, it's not like stopping a bullet. You're stopping a laser.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, if you understand how light works, that's stupidly strong. But in the game Jedi: The Fallen Order, which I play, the first power you actually still have is slow, and you find out later that when his master died was the first time he used it. Yeah, and so he taps into that side of the dark side a little bit, right? But it's like it's almost like is slow an evil power? No, because you can just slow someone down and then walk past them, right? So it's kind of like that vanilla like bad side, dark side. But what is Force Lightning? I don't really care. Like, unless you're hitting a droid, or if you're hitting like an electrical conduit, that's really the only non-malicious way you could do a Force Lightning attack. That's why it's always shown to be like the masters of the dark side have Force Lightning, right?
Okay.
Let's get to the middle ground here instead of like the less potent to the extreme potent dark side powers. For Scream.
Scream.
Oh. It channels through vocal cords, but remember, it's quantumly, so you are not just using vocals, you're actually channeling. Where does the dark side come from? Fear leads to so fear leads to anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. So fear, I'm afraid, I slow you down. Anger, I hit harder. Okay? And then anger leads to hate. Hate is when you want someone to be terrified of you. You want them to feel as weak as you. In fact, you just want them to feel terrible. For Scream is when you channel all your pain and rage into the ether, and people that aren't resistant will literally grab their head because they're seeing hallucinations of their worst fear. People who are resistant but still take the physical damage, their ears will bleed a little bit. And then people that are fully resistant, they will get hit and they will just feel dread.
Was that ever shown in any of the movies?
Games.
Okay.
It's shown in games and the books. A lot of dark side stuff was only shown in games and books because it's not really illustrated very well. Because by the time the movies come around, there's not many Sith, right? And so you kind of you're limited, right? It's more of the past or the very far future of this story. You see a lot more dark side stuff. And then there's other ones, like there's the ability to oh my god, I'm having a brain fart here, because there's a reverse to it. Luke discovers the ability to force project himself, right? The other one is to actually haunt somebody. The Sith ability is to haunt somebody and give someone nightmares and have
Which
them
is what Palpatine does to Kylo. No?
I think that's just his trauma, to be honest.
Okay, gotcha.
It's very specific, like, because they always show it that in order to illustrate it, they always show that the master is actually doing it on the back end after the nightmare.
Okay.
And it's more of, instead of, so most powers, it's more like I'm actively using this. It's more of a curse.
I just figured it was like Palpatine, like from the grave, like doing it because Kylo never had any interaction with him. He wouldn't know what he sounds like or looks like.
Yeah, that's just being force sensitive, and Palpatine is the type of force user that gets stronger through just sheer willpower, not that he's blessed like Anakin, right? It's kind of like that idea of like the old wizard is very strong. It's the kind of the same concept. I mean, like Yoda is not he's a gifted force user, but was he like a prophecy like Anakin? No. So he's kind of, so Yoda's kind of like the light side of Palpatine, right? It's that concept of the old man who's very wise at what he does and very powerful because of it. That's why people first started laughing when they're like, why is this old man able to do like lightsaber moves? I'm like, it's because it's force. He's not just using his muscles and doing this. It's because he can just move his body like a puppet. That's more of what's going on. That's why people go, why does Yoda use a cane, but then he's flipping around like a ninja? Like, because he's not. He's moving his body with the force, and he knows how to move his muscles of the style of lightsaber. So is it a fun gimmick and juxtaposition between old man walking slowly with a cane, and then you have a small little person that's able to jump 50 feet in the air and spin like a top and cut everything? And yeah, no, it's great. But there is a lore reason for it.
Okay.
Take away the size, and that's Palpatine. You get that now?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So for Dark Force abilities, and they can always be developed with other writers. I'm sure I'm missing like 3 of them off the top of my head, but yeah, it's more so just direct violence and anger, and you're attacking somebody. Like, there is no like, oh, I'm using the dark side for this great thing. No, it's not that. It's more so. It's kind of like, I love games that actually incorporate it as you choose what powers you get. And if you choose light side, the game's a little harder, but it's more rewarding. If you choose dark side, the game is a lot easier, but then consequences of actions. Mm-hmm. That's very much how it works.
Okay.
So the first movie shows what Jedi can do, because now we actually have the 3D animation to actually show everything. And they, like, episode 1, I know you see future sight, you see force speed, you see meditation. I don't think you see healing until the Clone Wars, actually. But you don't really see many force powers because it's just hard to animate it. Yeah, right? It's just easier to kind of just do gunfire, because 1, force is rare. Like, not okay. Let me rephrase that. Force uses are rare. So it just makes more sense, instead of like, you know, every kid wants to be like 1,000 Jedi versus 1,000 Sith. Wouldn't that be a cool fight? I'm like, yes and no. Like, that would be so chaotic and crazy. And we'll talk about how that actually happened at one point in the lore. So why the movies get flack is because if you just read the script as an adult, and I don't mean the script as in the language, I mean like what is going on, it's great. How it's implemented on a world plot is not great.
Like, so what do you mean? Like how it's able to be portrayed?
How the audience is able to figure everything out.
Okay, gotcha.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the hell out of this by actually focusing on a Sith, not the Jedi. So forget Anakin Skywalker, forget Obi-Wan Kenobi, forget Qui-Gon Jinn, forget all that. Let's go and talk about Palpatine, okay? Whose name I just looked up because I keep on forgetting his first name. Wait, hold on.
It's Emperor.
No, it's Sheev. Sheev.
Huh.
Yeah. And he originated as a, like, Naboo politician. He was a Sith apprentice. This is like the end of the Sith's empire. Like, they actually had an empire a long time ago that fought against the Jedi, where the Sith actually won. They actually took over Coruscant for a little bit, and that's why the third movie is called Revenge of the Sith, because the Sith got almost wiped out. And Palpatine followed this old Sith's doctrine, because after the Sith Empire got wiped out, the Sith thought of a great way to sneak into the governmental side and kind of corrupt the entire system, and let the system betray the Jedi, because they knew that they could not just go head to head with them. They had to infect the entire organism.
So that's why he does like the whole political thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's where episode 1 comes in. Episode 1, Palpatine is playing 2 coins at the same time. He plays this mysterious cloaked figure that you see in a hologram that is known as Darth Sidious. Okay? But he also is the senator from Naboo. And so the whole goal here is for him, I'll use American politics to make this make sense. He essentially is a regular senator in the state of, let's say, Texas, just to make this fun. Texas is getting surrounded, and he then goes to the U.S. government and goes, "Hey, I need the help here. Can we do a vote? And you guys help us." The vote gets stalled, and he goes, "Okay, well, I don't believe in the
ability.
I'm using U.S. politics to make this make sense. I don't believe in what the vice president and president is doing, who's head of the Senate. The vice president's head of the Senate, by the way, in real life. But it's called the Supreme Chancellor in Star Wars, which is essentially the executive branch of the Republic." He goes, I issue a vote of no contempt, meaning I do not believe in you, and I think we need a new one in an emergency
No confidence.
session. No confidence. You're right. Got that wrong, but that still is the point. He arranged the Trade Federation, these original bad guys, the aliens, and these battle droids that these kids are like, "Oh, these are the bad guys." I'm like, yeah, but look at what's happening. As kids, you're not really able to understand it. As an adult, you're like, I see what's going on, but it's not portrayed very well in dialogue. So he gets he gets the seat. He gets to be Supreme Chancellor because of this emergency session in order to send troops to Naboo. By the time he does that, Naboo is saved by the local aliens, the Nerubians. It's hard to say that word. And yeah, I know. And Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin. So that's like that big battle at the end of 1. They kind of do everything themselves. But he was actually like, it is said in the novel, like he actually thinks back on that. And it's like, it's kind of funny. They kind of did the work for me, but I really was going to save Naboo. It's not like I have hatred towards the planet. It's like, yeah, people forget Sith are not inherently just, I hate everything. It's, I let my emotions run me. That's what Sith are.
Yeah.
So he loves Naboo. He really does. He has no anger in Naboo whatsoever. He really was going to save them. He's like, yeah, no, I mean, I'm going to kill some people by doing this terrible thing because of the Trade Federation, because I have to arrange this, but I'm not here to wipe people out.
I'm here to get what I want.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get what I want, you know, innocence be damned, but I'm not here to be a genocidal maniac. They didn't do anything wrong. I'm just here to kill the Jedi. You guys just so happen to be in the way, and I'm sorry, but this is how it is. Like, that's the Sith, right? Is they're not here to just be mustache twirling, I'm killing things for the sake of evilness. It's, we have a goal here and a rivalry. If you get in the way, you accidentally will get killed, and my bad, but I also don't care. That's Sith, right? While Jedi would go out of their way to save people, which might get them killed. So he gets the seat, he gets the presidency, he gets the Supreme Chancellor. So what's next? Okay, well, there's still a Senate. Just because he's the president doesn't mean that he can do whatever he wants. It's not like he rules the galaxy, and he still has the Jedi to deal with, right? Even though the Jedi are not necessarily a part of the government, they have massive sway because everyone respects them, and they are literally the peacekeeping, like, third party, right? Because everything's being held together, because if the Jedi get involved, when things get hostile, then things won't be hostile. So in a weird way, the Jedi are kind of at the peak of their power. Politically, even though the Jedi say they're not political, they're totally political.
Yeah. And there's still not that many of them at this time.
Oh no, there's a lot.
Oh, this is when, okay, never mind.
This is in between
like when
1
they
and
had
2.
like all of the younglings and yeah.
No, forget the younglings. Like, you got to think, the Sith and Jedi War was thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Jedi don't just die a lot.
Yeah.
These are super soldiers that are monks that are able to wield magic. That
and there's
aren't
like
dealing...
ones like Yoda that live for like hundreds of years. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like they're struggling.
Yeah, okay.
They really do have, like, you got to think, they got so powerful, they're like, well, we can actually make different branches. We got branches of just defenders. We got branches of just people that go out and seek.
Yeah.
We got branches that just do politics. We got branches that just do nature work. Like, I mean, they have so many at this point, which is why he was like, how am I going to kill them all? Well, the best way to do it is right under their nose. So he devises this plan to essentially go to this planet that specializes in cloning and creating armies for the highest bidder in the Outer Rim, because gangsters might pay. They don't want to use their actual people they care about, and it's just cheaper to just build droids or clones. Clones are more efficient. Droids are cheap. Droids, which are robots, are cheaper. So this planet is called Kamino, and they're called Kaminoans. And this is where you get the first clone troopers. Palpatine arranges this special cabal of planets on the edge of the galactic that don't get a lot of support that want to be independent. Imagine it's actually pretty accurate. Imagine if Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, and Florida was like, you guys really aren't helping. We're just going to separate. We're still going to trade. Like, we're not going to go to war, but we just want to separate. That's really it. That's honestly the best way I can describe where the separatists came from. It wasn't a violent act. It's not like we hate the Galactic
It's just
Republic.
that we want to step away from this.
You're not really, yeah. Why are we paying taxes? You're not helping us. You're not. So we're just going to handle things ourselves, and then we're going to trade, and we're going to be friendly, and we're just going to have this symbiotic relationship, right? And that's when you hear what's going on at the beginning of episode 2. That's what's going on with the separatists and the separatist talks. That's why Padme is trying to deal with that negotiation wise, right? Palpatine, on the other hand, is like, I'm starting this shit. I'm actually the one who started the separatist movement, just like I started the Trade Federation doing that. And then he's also building a clone army under the guise of a dead Jedi's name. So the Kaminoans straight up are going, no, the Jedi ordered this. This is totally, like, no, they're right. Like, the Kaminoans were not bad. They legitimately thought they were making clones for the Republic.
Yeah, right? I never thought that they were bad, but like that, I guess, like flew over my head. That like that's why like no one like knew who this guy was that asked for the clones. That makes so much more sense now.
And that's why the Jedi did not detect it.
So
there was no militia. There was no malicious intent. There were no bad vibes in the Force.
Yeah.
Because these guys were like, no, we're making an army to save the Republic. So why would there be any sort of hate?
So did Palpatine have a deal with Jango Fett?
Yes. So Palpatine got
that's how Order 66 got like ingrained, right?
Okay, yeah, let's break this down.
Okay.
So this is going to go into, remember how I said that we're going to touch on a lot of the IP mostly through film?
Mm-hmm.
This is where we're going to have to touch a video game called Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
Okay.
All right. Before I get there though, we have to talk about Count Dooku. Count Dooku was Yoda's apprentice.
Yes.
And Qui-Gon's master.
Oh. Okay, yeah.
Okay. He then left the Jedi Order voluntarily. He's not a fallen Jedi. There's not really a word for it. It's more like you can do that. You can be like, I don't want to do this anymore. The Jedi aren't hostile and they aren't about taking away freedom. So they're like, okay, yeah, just don't say you're representing us.
Yeah.
It's kind of a breach of ethics. But yeah, go. You want to do your own thing? Go do your own thing. But if we catch you using the Force for nefarious reasons, we're coming after you because that's our one thing we can actually be aggressive at. If they catch a Force user manipulating people against their will, that's one of the few things Jedi can go assassinate them, because that's terrifying. You have somebody literally able to bend quantum mechanics to make whatever reality they want. So that's kind of like their one thing they can be aggressive at, and Dooku knows that. And so he gets recruited by Palpatine, because we'll talk about this in the Sith versus Jedi episode. But at this point, the Sith have a mantra of there are only ever two, the master and the apprentice. So Palpatine had Maul. Maul died, air quotes. And to Palpatine's knowledge at the time, he really thought he was dead, right? Because there is a certain loyalty, weird loyalty, very toxic loyalty. Anyway, between a master and their apprentice when it comes to Sith. So when Palpatine had no apprentice, it was almost mandatory mantra that he actually went and found one. So he found Dooku was perfect, right for it, because he felt Dooku was ostracized by the Jedi Order because they would not interfere in a issue that Dooku was personally invested in. That's why he left, right? Palpatine detected that and got his little claws into him, and then used Dooku as the surrogate to talk to the Kaminoans. Also to Jango Fett. Because Palpatine can't go around showing his face as the senator.
True.
So he has to find some other proxy to do this for him as well. So at the end of Star Wars Bounty Hunter, the game, you're playing as Jango the entire time. And you have a companion that's kind of like the old smoking lady that handles all your paperwork. Like, he's got that as kind of his mom figure. She's adorable. She dies, but she's like, you need to find a life out of this. You need to find someone that you can love. She wants him to find a romantic partner and to settle down and have a kid.
But instead, he just has a kid.
Exactly.
An exact copy of him.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for that. So this is where like we'll have to talk about Mandalorians and their idea of honor and trust. There's a level of, how do I say this? Class superiority, not racial superiority. They're actually multiracial. They're shown mostly human, but they can be multiracial. That's more like, if you're a Mandalorian, you're better than everybody else. So why would I adopt somebody who's not a Mandalorian? I'll just make one. So,
So
Dooku,
Jango is a Mandalorian?
Jango's a Mandalorian.
Okay.
Jango, that helmet, that is an
That's the
iconic helmet.
Mandalorian. Okay, because
Yeah,
that makes sense. Because
That's their style.
the
And
show.
you'll see
Okay.
different variations, but in the end, it looks Spartan, Greco-Greek Roman helmet, right? Just sci-fi, right? That's a Mandalorian helmet. That's kind of the fun part, is like, what happens if the Spartans went to war against the samurai? That's kind of the idea. And Jango takes this contract to kill a rogue apprentice of a Sith. Actually, I'm not going to go into that. That's its own thing. But that was orchestrated by Dooku to find the best candidate to clone somebody, because you need to have the base of where these clones are coming from able to kill a Force user. That was the whole point. So the contract, the bounty of Star Wars Bounty Hunter, was a test to find the best genetics to make the army of a clones to kill all the Force users. Yeah, if you break it down that way, it's pretty fucking epic. But it's honestly more disguised as like a cowboy bounty hunter game. It's pretty cool. I highly recommend it. Also, you get to fly on a jetpack. So at the end of that, you see Jango go, here's my offer. If you want me to do this with you, one, stupid amount of money once it's done, right? Give me a stipend while I'm doing it. And then when it's done, give me so much money that retirement is a joke, right? And one more thing, I'm going to clone unadulterated, unchanged, where it grows up normally, not at, I think it's like 5, it was both twice the speed for some and 3 times the speed for others. They would grow them faster. Just logistics, just makes sense. But he wants a clone that's just normal, perfect clone of him, and that's Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where that story sort of ends. Okay. If you want more of that, you can play the game. You can watch episode 2 again, or you can read the Boba Fett books, right? And that and even like Mandalorian touches on it. The Book of Boba Fett show covers it a little bit. There's a lot that goes in there, but I'm just covering it of the core lore of why that was necessary. Is that they wanted a perfect Force killer, right? So they made these clones, and that's where you mentioned Order 66.
Yeah.
They were able to program in their genetics orders that would come from a certain voice, which was Palpatine's. When given an order with a number, would execute that order. And there are different orders. I know there's one where they just like commit suicide. Like there's different ones that they do, but they never needed to do that.
Yeah.
So
that was Palpatine's, or no, that was Jango Fett's doing, or was that the
66?
Yeah. Like
no one was aware of that except Palpatine and the Kaminoans. The head of the genetics
put that in there.
Yeah, Dooku, Palpatine, and the head of the genetics and Kamino knew about the Order 66.
So that one wasn't necessarily innocent as far as like knowing what they were doing. Because like the rest of them were just like, yeah, we're just breeding these little clones.
It's actually pretty interesting. You actually get to see this, that during episode 2, they mentioned sort of the genetic modification. And so there's a hint. They're like, their genetics are different than the father, the original one. They're made to be less independent, more loyal, and follow orders to a T, while the other one was rebellious, independent, and free thinking, right? So they were able to do that on a genetic level, and that's why there are some clones that work perfectly just as a squad, Republic Commando game. There are some that work as grunts. Okay, watch any of the movies, and there you go. There are some that are actually made to be behind enemy lines commandos, where they follow orders to the T, but they're also still free thinking.
Okay.
They like did different things to show that.
Okay.
Now here's the reason. Like you're like, why have Order 66? Well, Kaminoans aren't going to question it when the Jedi goes, oh yeah, just in case their Force wielder gets compromised.
So they didn't realize it would have like a downside in that aspect. Okay, I
That's
gotcha.
a very good question. I was so happy you asked that.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, it all was a manipulation. It all was a manipulation. There really, like, even Dooku was manipulated in the end.
Yeah.
Like, he knew what he was doing with the clones. Like, he knew what he was doing all around, but he had no idea what was happening with Anakin.
Mm.
He did not know Palpatine was like, ooh, I want that one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you saw.
He thought he was Palpatine's chosen one.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%, because he felt betrayed already, and so Palpatine used that as a manipulation tactic. And that's why when Palpatine told Anakin in Episode 3, kill him now, Dooku's like, the fuck? He's like, excuse me? And you can almost, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sad that actor is gone. But he, you can almost see in his face, I accept my fate because I am a Sith and I want the Jedi to fall. And if this is the way my master wants it to be done, he could have just shouted, he's a Sith Lord. Right then, he could have done that. Why didn't he do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's manipulation. You want them to not just follow orders, you want them to believe in your cause.
Gotcha.
Palpatine is not dangerous because he's a Sith. Palpatine is dangerous because he's a master manipulator.
Okay.
So let's get back to the clones. And eventually, the war pops off. The clones are brought in. Palpatine is Supreme Chancellor. And so here's the thing, so in American politics, let me explain this. And I like, is this politics talk? No, just to make things easy for people to understand. Forget the last 20 years of military conflict. Kind of hard to do, but just bear with me. The president can order an executive order to actually have a strike on a target, right? But he has to sign off on it on the executive branch. And it's only for that specific instance, right?
And a group of people still have to, like, approve
No.
it. No?
So, yeah, this is where it gets a little confusing for people. So now we're also going to talk about British politics. The royal family and the prime minister are two halves of the same coin. The royal family is the commander-in-chief, and the prime minister is head of parliament, right? So president is just both of those, but then the vice president handles the Senate. Okay. That's why the president is both the commander-in-chief and also the main representative of the people, while the prime minister in Britain is the representative of the people because he's voted in. While
I took government, like 13 years ago.
Fair enough. But I'm trying to make this simplified so that that is important to understand, because the whole point of the Clone Wars, Palpatine still has to go through the Senate, and he's trying to essentially get total power and to wipe out the Jedi. So yes, he has the clones to do that. But if he orders Order 66 right now, the government still is going to know, and the Senate is still going to turn on him. So he has to make it so that he doesn't need the Senate anymore. So he keeps on making executive orders to give himself more and more power as the clones go on. This is where he gets Anakin to start siding with him politically, being like, no, we need to end this war as quickly as possible. You're on the front lines. You know how bad this is. I'm just trying to end this like you.
Because this is episode 3, right? So this is when it's mentioned that he's been in power longer than he should have.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's not been another election. It's not like there's been an election then he's like moved on. No, he's been here for 3 terms essentially, and he's also giving himself more powers.
Gotcha.
Okay, and the Senate is voting in it because the Senate
think it's in their best interest.
Young politicians, as in they are not used to dealing with a world at war. The universe at war, right? They're not used to that. So they're like, yeah, whatever it takes for us to stay safe, we'll just give you powers and we'll just assume you're going to relinquish them once the war's over, right? That's what we all do. But not everyone's George Washington. Historians are going to love that reference. So Palpatine essentially does all of that. By the time Order 66 comes down, where all the troops turn their guns on Jedi, there's no one politically to challenge him. In fact, rewatch episode 4. It is a throwaway line from the original script that's still there, that the reason that Death Star was made was to exhume total control on the galaxy, because they wiped out the Senate. They didn't kill them. It's more of they disbanded the Senate. That was an episode. That was the first Star Wars movie. So this has been in the making the entire time. That's why I said during the podcast, the entire Palpatine arc, perfectly done. Perfectly done. Because that is beautiful writing, which you won't hear me say very often about Star Wars. But it is a masterclass in what actually happened. So another thing we talked about in the podcast that I'm going to talk about here because it's very lore important is why did we stop using clones, right? And I mentioned this in the podcast. One, because anyone can make a new clone army to rise up against you. And that's why the idea of the Clone Wars was like, oh my gosh, that's like when Luke talked about it, it was like a forgotten thing. They're like, yeah, it happened recently, as in like not last generation, but the generation before that was in the Clone Wars, right? It's like talking about World War II when you're in the Cold War, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of recent, but not. But by the time it's like our generation, we're just like, yeah, World War II is ancient. Okay, that's like that concept of a type of war is over with. It's never going to happen again. So that's how they do Clone Wars. Clones can never be made again.
Okay.
Right? Cloning is very hard to do, and there was only one race that was able to do it efficiently, and that was Kaminoans, and they're gone. The Empire wiped them out. They're like, we're not doing this. We are not having the same thing happen to us. And that's why Vader's unit is nothing but the original clones, and all the new stormtroopers are conscripts that are brainwashed.
Yeah.
So that's where you get Finn. And that's when I would mention like the new movies had really high potential. Like I honestly thought Finn, the stormtrooper,
would be the main guy.
Was like, I wouldn't have minded. Like, okay, so in the Legends books, it is supposed to be like Han and Leia's two kids fighting, one being Jedi, one being Sith. That's actually what's supposed to happen, right? They didn't do that. They just had Ben.
Had one kid, yeah.
Right, they just had one kid. And then and I wasn't even mad at that. I'm like, yeah, you can do different interpretations and do it right. But like, Finn could have been this really cool, like, I was a stormtrooper, I was brainwashed, now I'm fighting against my programming. I have PTSD, so I have that with the dark side. And, you know, that kind of was like, let me rise up. And Rey could have been like finding herself doing that. And so they could have done both of those at the same time. We'll talk about why that didn't happen some other time, because that's that there is nothing else to say, but that is controversy as fuck. Like, and I don't mean that people don't deny it happened. It's that it's so messed up that I'm not going to mention it here because it's just bad. It's just bad PR that makes Disney look really, really disgusting. So back to lore, the clones were a great success, and that's why you see a lot of the same military tech altered, but mostly the same from the Republican Army go into the Empire, minus the TIE fighters. Like, that's, don't know how that transfers very well, but actually it's fun how they did that is they showed the rebels using old tech and changing it. And so you'll see like in the war in the Republic, the old war, they had a sort of X-Wing like fighter. I forgot its name, but then the rebels essentially took out some of the wings, the extra armor, made it faster in order to be the TIE fighter. And so they're kind of reusing old tech to fight the Empire. Why TIE fighters? Why change all that? Because strangely, their Star Destroyers, their main battleships stayed the same. If you look at the models, they're very much the same. So why change the fighters? In short, you don't need to pay for clones anymore. You just need to brainwash some people. The other thing is, they don't say it in the movies, but if you play any of the video games where there's a lot of space combat, TIE fighters are fast. The original idea of TIE fighters versus X-Wings was actually inspired by World War II fighter pilots. It was the Japanese Zero fighters versus the Tomcat and the Spitfire. Tomcat being American, Spitfire being British. Okay? And that was both also, I mentioned Japanese, but it's also the Germans. So they had very fast fighters, not well armored. So gun versus gun, the Allies in World War II won every time. Speed versus speed, the Axis one. They were more maneuverable. Same thing with TIE fighters. Weirdly, the ones that don't like they have wings and they just have 2 parallel slots are fast. But they're more mass production. That's the best way to do it. Have a bunch of fast bugs spinning around your head. You can't kill them all before they kill you. That was kind of the idea of the TIE fighter. Then you have the TIE interceptors, which are the ones that they still have the center like a TIE fighter, but then they're, instead of 2 flats, it's 2 ones that are curved and they're going straight like pincers. It's just your interceptor fighter. It's even faster, and it's got guns that can actually shoot way ahead of its target. Instead of trying to lock on, you can just eyeball it. So everything has a more tanky or more fast. Both sides kind of balance it out, and that's both a video game thing and a lore thing. So
Gotcha.
you have that in lore, you're looking at like the rebellion era, which is Luke's era. Why aren't there a lot of battle droids? Why aren't that? Well, that's the same kind of idea of clones, like kind of expensive, and also don't really want to have a rebellion. They don't want one faction to rise up with mass production, and so the Empire just cuts any type of mass production they have, and except when it's producing their own units, like hardware, brainwashing, all that stuff. And that's where you get this kind of dystopian. Why does it seem like there's less stuff in the future when we should have improved things? That's why, is because a lot of things that you see are reused materials or reused equipment, and all the major production facilities that aren't controlled by the fascist empire are gone. So that's a lore reason. While yes, old movies, limited production, but it actually makes sense.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense of what Palpatine would do, because he does not want to be. He doesn't want any competition. So that is kind of where all that comes from. Now, why not make his own version of a Sith temple? This is Palpatine's flaw, is that he felt that because of the old mantra of there will only be 2, he can't really leave that, and that he doesn't trust Dark Force users to not rise up and kill him too.
Gotcha.
So that's why that never happens. But you do have the Inquisitors, which are kidnapped Padawans that are tortured and converted to be these Dark Force users that hunt down the last remaining Jedi that weren't killed by Order 66, right? So, and that kind of leaves us to open-ended questions, and new games can come out, new stories can come out, that kind of, because the universe is vast, and so you can pretty much make up whatever story you want. The idea of Cal Kestis from this new game that I'm playing, it was inspired by the original like legacy books, the legend books idea, but not at the same time, not really. It was kind of its own thing. We never really touched on, could Jedi, were there, it always was hinted that like Ben and Yoda were the last Jedi. And then it goes into, oh, well, actually more Jedi survived, but then there were ways that the Empire and Vader killed them. And so you can play Force Unleashed and you can see how that happened. You can play Fallen Order and see how that happened. And that's all stuff that happens in between episode 3 and 4, because that's the connecting point. But my favorite argument, and I'm going to leave up on this as the last thing, in lore, now we've covered Palpatine. What the hell happened with Anakin, right? Why did Qui-Gon recruit him? So you mentioned that there was once a prophecy, and that the prophecy said that there would be a chosen one who will bring balance to the Force.
Balance being the key word.
Yes.
I know that much.
And for some reason, they did not quite grasp that that's not a good thing.
Yeah, they just took it as, oh yeah, it'll help defeat the dark side.
Well, that's their hubris, but in wording, it makes sense because Jedi are actually about balance, while Sith are about imbalance and taking over things. So they felt like, oh, this is the person that will bring balance to the Force, meaning he will fix the Force, right? He doesn't fix the Force.
He literally balances it.
He balances what users are using it. So before, I think it was because here's the thing. Yes, Order 66 wiped out a lot of the Jedi. The Clone Wars were no slouch. This is when Padawans were dying, Knights were dying. Because I mean, you got to think there were Knights that were in starfighters. Can't really deflect a blaster bolt if you're getting hit by a missile from another plane, you know. it's kind of hard to do. And you got to also think all force takes focus. So if you are kind of panicking, and trust me, there is no greater of a panicking situation than a fucking battlefield, okay? Where people are trying to kill you, and in comms in your ear, you get the screams of your allies as they're dying and launching orders. You really think you're going to be calm in that situation? So your ability to use the force will diminish. So your defenses will diminish. So Jedi did die during that fight. It wasn't as common as you might think, but because the wars lasted, I'm going to get this wrong, but I want to say around 4 years. But maybe longer. That's enough time to kind of whittle down those numbers, right? Because I don't care how many blaster bolts you can deflect. If a line of battle droids line up like a bunch of redcoats from the Revolutionary War and all shoot 20 rounds at you at once, good luck. And that's what happened. Or Jedi would try and be heroes, and they would try and save civilian populations in a war battle. This is not like Jedi were made to be peacekeepers, not warriors. So them being heroes and saving a family from like a gangster or a bad politician would be fine. They're completely fine. But they're like, oh, there's a ballistic missile heading for this family. I'm going to stop the missile and get the family out, but then it's going to detonate. And that's a lot what happened. It was more so heroes dying, really. And then by the time 66 happened, I'm not kidding, 8 hours after Order 66 happened, I can count that there was probably fingers and toes the amount of Jedi that were alive at this point. Even the greatest Jedi were caught off guard. Even Yoda was like, that was close.
Yeah, because that's why he goes into hiding.
No, he doesn't go to hide for that.
No,
Yoda straight up goes one-on-one versus the Emperor. He did not go into hiding.
That's right. It was after he failed.
So I like, actually, there is a book that's written about why Yoda actually went to exile, because a lot of people griped about this, including a critic called Nostalgia Critic. Yoda, just as Ben Kenobi figured it out, you can't win against the Sith by fighting the Sith. You have to outpiece them, which sounds lame, but that's really what it was. Because think about it. How did Luke win? He didn't beat Palpatine. He showed that
his father.
He converted his father by showing, I'm better than that. I am a Jedi like my father before me, not like my father before me, aka my father. He's saying I'm a Jedi like Anakin before I was around, right? And that was kind of the whole point. Yoda went to exile because like, I tried facing against Sidious. Hypothetically, we could do round 2 and I could win. But what's going to change? Like, what is anything going to change?
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not supposed to be a governmental body. That's not the purpose of the Jedi. If you look into it, the Jedi are supposed to be a spiritual faction. They're not supposed to be governmental. They're not supposed to actually be handling anything. At best, they're supposed to be resolving conflicts. That's where the political side started, but it kept getting more and more ingrained into government, and government has military problems. And so Yoda was like, yeah, this isn't working. I have to go into exile because I'm not going to die. Like, I'm not just going to kill myself. I'm not just going to like fight to the end. And he doesn't condemn any Jedi that does that. Like, he's not like, you do you, right? Because there are different classes of Jedi that are like, no, we're going to keep defending the innocent. And Yoda's like, yeah, don't do that. That's great. But Yoda's not a class of defender. He's actually a naturalist. He's more of, I forgot what it's called. There's a special word for it, but they focus on more so the connection in all living things. So that's what he does. And so that's kind of why he's like so respected, is that he's the best at that, while Mace Windu is the best guardian out of all of them. Okay. So Yoda's like, I'm just going to go to the most
place.
Well, not just far away place. He found the most dense life place ever, which was Dagobah, which is like a giant swamp planet. And if you know microbiology, you know I'm telling the truth. That is so much life. But if you find him, he's just a regular hermit dude who's just living peacefully. He literally is feeding off the Force. Like, he's not eating. Like he eats Luke's treats because he's like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is great. Like why wouldn't you? You're like old and they're kind of like, oh man, I'm kind of nuts. Let's go ahead and eat this chocolate. Like that's kind of like, why wouldn't you? But in all reality, Yoda was just kind of there, just chilling. Like he would make tea and stuff like that. Like, but that's kind of the idea: is you're living symbiotically with all life, right? So you're not going out necessarily hunting, but if you have like mushrooms or leaves or stuff like that, like he's like, yeah, sure, why not? But other than that, he can also just rejuvenate his cells.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then later it became a Jedi ability to become a Force ghost. Sith can't do that. Sith don't get an afterlife. That's kind of like the whole tying religion into it a little bit, is that it's hinted that if you are so at peace with the Force as a Jedi, you don't actually fully die. You can live on as a Force ghost. And not
so. Question real quick: when Luke sees Anakin at the end of 6,
yes,
is that not as a ghost?
No, it is.
Okay, so it's because he turned good so fast.
So
and he's so powerful.
We have to give it two pieces here. One, suspension of disbelief. It's made to be a cinematic movie of a happily ever after. So let's acknowledge that and then throw that out the window. He is also supposed to be the most powerful Force user ever. Okay, for him just to switch immediately to the light side, and it's not that he just goes, oh, I'm now going to fight bad. It's, I am sorry I did this, and I'm so proud of you that you actually were not like me, and that you protected your sister, and you did these amazing things. I'm not going to be saved here, but you woke me up, and I appreciate that. It's the difference between like, I think I'm a really good guy, and being, no, I'm so humble. I understand. I'm done. I am so sorry. You know, that's what a Jedi is. It's being at peace and not having an ego.
Okay.
So him just flipping like that, you got to remember also, Qui-Gon's ghost is looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Kenobi's ghost is looking at him. So he could just be like, all right, come on, dude. Come on. You're almost there. All right. Like, that's kind of the theory of what went down. There's no like written rule. That's just kind of talked of what happened there. So yeah, it is, it's fiction. It's a little wacky. It's a little fun. We try to make sense of it and bring out these rules and this lore. And some lore is solid, some is fan made that then got confirmed, and some is retconned. So with Star Wars, it's really a roll of the dice, depending on what subject you talk of how accurate and how for sure I can be on these topics, right? I can tell you 100% of what happened with the clones, and there's no deviation of that. But if you ask me certain things about the Force, or certain things about lightsabers, or why every ship somehow has artificial gravity, it just doesn't make any sense. But who cares? It's Star Wars. Just make up. They're so technologically advanced that they have this, and we just don't talk about it. And we're just there's a play on words where the difference between fantasy and sci-fi is, in fantasy, your magic is your technology, and in sci-fi, your technology is your magic, right? So in fantasy, in order to get to another location far away, you do this ritual and you make this portal, and now you can move this. Or maybe there's like a blimp that you can control with these crystals that are floating in air, like a skyship. That's your technology, but it's magic, right? And then sci-fi is the opposite. How did you do this? Oh, we have this technological thing that does these amazing things that make no scientific sense whatsoever because it's so far advanced that we can't understand it. That's sci-fi.
So it's so funny to me because everything is so advanced, but they don't have ultrasounds.
Okay. That's because Padme did not actually
go to tell anyone.
That's actually why. So yeah, it actually is theorized that because she was hiding it.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 things. She was hiding it, so she never got pre-up treatment. Anakin choked the shit out of her. And I'm sorry. That really, he almost killed her. That's not, she passed out because of lack of oxygen. No, she almost died.
Mm-hmm.
I give Natalie Portman a lot of credit. I've seen her in a lot of things. I think she's a great actress. It's very hard to actually portray real violence to your own body. That's why stuntmen are a thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? For your actor or actress to do that actually takes a lot of work. But in lore, if you want to think about it, the Antichrist just choked you with a magical gauntlet. You're not just going unconscious at that point. Like, you actually took some major damage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then thirdly is she actually did lose the will to live, right? She was so heartbroken that there is such a thing in real medical science that people can die of heartbreak.
Yeah.
So put all three of those things together. That's how that happened.
Well, no, it just kind of like made me giggle a little bit because I was like, how do they have this much technology that's able to do all these things, but they can't figure out that she's having more than one baby?
They did, but only when she got to a medical facility.
Yeah. Once,
Yeah, so
like she
that
was
is actually like
birth.
that is 100% scientific canon. That's not like a made up thing. Like, how would she know?
Mm-hmm.
She had like I think she had one servant that was like a midwife kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now you can make the argument you could just have an ultrasound brought to her, right? But remember, this is not like
If anyone found out.
Yeah, because Anakin is not just a Jedi; he is a general,
Mm-hmm.
and Padme is trying to resolve and also keep the Chancellor from gaining too much power. She doesn't know the Chancellor is evil, but she's like, I need to stop this from being a corrupt government. And I can't do that if all of a sudden I have look at the whore who slept with a Jedi.
Yeah.
Right? So she has to keep this secret.
Mm-hmm.
So anything they can do to avoid any sort of detection, including not having medical equipment relating specifically to pregnancies being brought, probably is what did it. So it's the irony of if you would have, it's the irony of if they would have just told the truth to Obi-Wan and like their close friends, then this could have all been avoided. But at the same time, could it have been? What happens if Chancellor Palpatine actually gets cornered and he just goes, Order 66, Order 66?
Mm-hmm. Or what if when Anakin turns into Vader, he already knows that there are two babies?
Oh, that would have been so much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been.
Like, it makes sense for the story. It just always made me giggle that like he didn't know when like they very easily could have known.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that they always say your emotions cloud your judgment. It's not just your judgment. In the Force, your emotions also cloud your perception. So that's why think of it this way. You're at peace, you're meditating, you're humbled, you're able to absorb everything that's coming at you because you know you're a small speck of dust and you are blessed to have this ability. While a Sith user is like, no, the Force is mine to control. I wield it. They're not going, I wield it. Let me look at my wife's belly. Like, that's not how that works. And Anakin, while he might not have gone Sith or straight dark side immediately, you are channeling in war constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All these Padawans that were growing up and training during the Clone Wars have a little dark side in them. It was constantly a thing. Like, Jedi and Padawan that survived Order 66, half the time the Padawans fell to the dark side. I'm not kidding. That was actually a common thing because these kids knew nothing but war. While Jedi were like, no, there's a time before war. I swear to God, we actually had peace. But these kids don't know that. And that's the tragedy. It also, like, it's kind of an interesting take on kids in real life brought in war will know nothing but war, right? Until someone actually shows them, no, there is peace possible, right? And we could talk that to geographical politics to this day that I won't be specific of, but just that concept.
So do you think that the war had him so distracted that he couldn't sense like multiple Force users coming from Padme? Since it came out that Leia can use the Force?
First off, being able to sense that a child has Force abilities is a very specific Jedi trait.
Okay, so only some of those that had that trait were Seekers.
And they became Seekers.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? Before, they were just all Jedi, and so happened that some Jedi were able to do that, right?
Okay.
And remember, this that I said originally is that a lot of these traditions started later in their arc. We're not talking about the ancient times. We're not talking about the Old Republic. We're talking about the Modern Republic is what it's called, which is what the movies are based in. While the Old Republic, they had different, like, kids could be discovered and be brought in, and they would just deal with that problem, right? So a lot of these traditions happen because of the Sith and Jedi war that happened a long time ago in order to prevent different things from happening. So Anakin wouldn't be able to tell that there were two Force children in him because he's just sensing that there's life forms coming from her belly.
Okay.
Right. And he also is kind of like, he's also panicking. He's also going like, he's not just going, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to panic. It's more so, I'm going to be a dad.
To someone that I shouldn't be having kids with. Or with.
I should not be having kids, period.
Oh, true.
Jedi aren't supposed to have children.
Oh, yeah. Emotional connections, duh.
Exactly, because it compromises them. So I'm not supposed to have kids. She's going to have drama. How are we going to handle this? How are we going to feed them? How are we going to do all this? So it's nothing but fear coming from him, right? So he's clouded.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people ask, why didn't he have this ability to do this? I'm like, he's not in the right state of mind.
Okay.
If you don't notice this, Obi-Wan kind of stays away from Padme most of the films.
On
That's
purpose?
why when he literally looked at her and she's pregnant, he's like, Anakin's father, isn't he? It's not just a guess.
Like, was
He can just be like,
purposely
oh yeah,
staying
I'm
away?
sensing from the Force. You two are connected through these kids. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so that kind of gives me a segue to the other question that like I've been wondering that like I told you about. So throughout the Clone Wars, they became brothers. Like that's literally what Obi-Wan says when he strikes him down is you are my brother, Anakin.
Mhm.
So they very clearly made an emotional connection, which like in the first place it's kind of hard to like not have an emotional connection with someone that you were the literal mentor of. So
Yes.
that part kind of like makes me like wonder like in the first place. But so do you think that because he gave him that other like connection, like they're making connections obviously, and so he has a big impact on him, so do you think that was like a negative influence almost for Anakin to end up becoming Vader and turning to the dark side?
I won't say that it helped the Vader turn one way or another. I will
Okay.
say that it hindered Obi-Wan to be perceptive.
Okay, because it like so I assume it like I guess it's like not every emotional connection was bad.
Right. Even Yoda says that.
Yeah, because
You need
like,
to be able to
otherwise
learn
they
to let
wouldn't
go.
have Padawans and Jedi Masters because
they have
are
bonds.
making
That
a
is-
connection regardless.
Yeah, exactly. That is still normal. There's nothing wrong with the idea of, okay, so the idea of a Jedi bond is different than earthly bonds because the Jedi, they believe that you shouldn't fear loss. There's a difference, and that's something like with Buddhism, right? You're not supposed to fear the loss of something, but it's completely fine to love something. That's kind of the whole point of life, isn't it? So it's not like they're going, do not love all. It's like the Jedi are not going, be a sociopath.
Do not feel anything.
Yeah, that's not the case at all. That's not it. It's these negative emotions. Where do these negative emotions come from? The fear of loss, the anger of things being taken away from you. That's the idea. The idea of love, the idea of honor, the idea of bonding, the idea of friendship is what Jedi fight for anyway. So they have to be able to feel this.
Okay,
Right?
so it was never a matter of them getting too close.
No, what it was is Qui-Gon fucked up. So Qui-Gon did not finish Obi-Wan's training and kind of rushed this whole thing in.
And made him be a mentor when he hadn't even finished his training.
No, it is literally theorized that if Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin just was like, okay, you guys all handle Naboo. We're going to stay on Coruscant. Game over. Sith lost. I'm not kidding. That really would fix everything because Qui-Gon did not. The ranks of Jedi is baby, youngling, Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Padawan is when you are apprenticing as a child underneath a Jedi, okay? And then it goes Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, Grand Master. Okay? When you actually knight somebody, it is supposed to be by a Jedi Master, not by another knight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They kind of were like, just because
So
it was
Qui-Gon
literally
was a
Yoda that
knight
was like,
and-
oh, I love Qui-Gon. He's the apprentice I wish I could have had instead of Dooku. Oh man, he's kind of forcing my hand, making me make Obi-Wan a knight when he hasn't even done
When
the
he's
trials
still
yet.
gotcha.
Like he hasn't even gone through knight life. So you're jumping into being a Jedi Master, which is when you take on a Padawan,
Hmm.
right? And so that's kind of why he kind of gets screwed over, is that he's not even properly trained in this.
Gotcha.
And so it is more of a, not a father-son, it is a brother mentality. It's a little brother who's annoying you, who's better at flying, but at the end, he doesn't listen to what you're saying, and he frustrates the shit out of you, but you die for him.
So
That's
why
like-
didn't Obi-Wan get another master?
You don't get another master once you become a knight.
Oh, so I thought you said that he wasn't yet a knight because he hadn't gone through his trials.
Yeah, and Yoda kind of was like, crap, Qui-Gon forced my hand. I love the dude, but let's just make him a knight. Let's just get it over with, because
So they could have like gone a different route and just given him another teacher to finish his training.
Yep.
And they just
and
didn't.
they could have moved Anakin into the temple. But it was literally like, this is where people go, it was Jedi hubris, and I hate that word specifically for this example, but there's no other word that actually makes sense on it. It really was them like, okay, we got this. Sure, this is like a weird kerfuffle, but we got to break a little tradition here and there in order to get this thing right. No, you should have stuck to your guns, and it would have been time consuming and taken longer, but it would have fixed the problem.
Gotcha.
Right? Qui-Gon was not a knight. Like he was not a Jedi Master. He was not ever a Jedi Master until the Clone Wars, when they brought him in. And that's it. Like he was supposed to be a Jedi Master before taking on a Padawan. Right? But they gave him a knighthood, and then it was like, all right, here's this kid who misses his mom, has a weird crush on this girl that's like 5 years older than him. He used the Force to age himself up in order to actually flirt with her. I'm not kidding. That's canon. There's a little weirdness into the romanticizing of it all.
Yeah, because like especially like noticing like her in like the first movie versus like him in their first movie.
And this is where I give George a little bit of credit here, because he originally wanted a child actress to play Padme.
Yeah.
But the age differential was only supposed to be like 2 to 3 years, which
Mhm.
isn't a big deal in adulthood.
Yeah.
Right? But it just looks so jarring going from that little kid to Hayden Christensen.
Mhm.
It was very weird. So if you just read it like a novel, you're like, this makes sense. But if you see it in the movie, you're like, this is creepy. Like, this is weird. Like, this is stalkerish. And honestly, listen to Anakin's
Listen to when
dialogue.
he talks to her, yeah.
No, not that. That's more romantic than how he actually talked about it to Obi-Wan. Before he ever like flirted with her, it was creepy.
Because
He's
like
like-
there was a part where she commented on like his age and like how much he's grown and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. And that was supposed to be kind of a little nod of her like being more friendly, right? Like, you're the little brother I never like had, because she's not aware of feelings yet. And that can happen, right? But it was more so how Anakin talked to Obi-Wan about it before he flirted with her, because he's like, Obi-Wan's like, your mind is somewhere else. Focus, hone in on your thoughts, control your emotions, the normal repertoire you would say.
Mhm.
And Anakin goes, I'd rather be thinking about Padme. And I was like, dude, what? You've like, because at first, because they're in the elevator ride, it's like, when's the last time you saw her? He's like, oh, it's been years. Okay, fair enough. But now you're like obsessing over her. Like it's very creepy. It does work on the play of him being overly protective, and the opening door to him having that passion of the dark side, because that's where it comes from. It comes from passion. It comes from obsession, right? So that's why they say it's fine to love life, but do not love out of neediness, right? Like it's the same way of how a parent loves their child purely because they want that child to be great. They want that child to like have a great life, to have a peaceful life, to have a happy life. But if you love somebody romantically, that's not, and you're not going like true love on romantic, you should be able to be like, if I give you up, if I have to give you up for you to be happy for the rest of your life, I will do that. Right? That is not Anakin. He's like, whatever it takes to be next to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have been a huge red flag for anybody. So what's funny about it all is that Palpatine had no idea that Anakin was the chosen one. He had no idea what was going on until like episode 2. And it just was like, well, this works.
Oh.
Like he was like, okay, I'm going to work on corrupting Anakin because you got to think, you got to remember
the Force, like that he was strong with the Force, right?
Yes, but also Anakin's personality and his problems. Because Anakin's a chatterbox. So he just kind of told him, was like, oh yeah, I had my mom and everything. And Palpatine, probably like with poker face, just looked like this, like, yes. But in his head, he was like, the fuck? It's like, you know your mom? See what I mean? Like he probably was like, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine. And as a Force user, he could sense he was really powerful. That's for sure. But here's the other thing: we keep forgetting he doesn't know what's going on in the Jedi Temple. Why would he? He's a senator, right? Sure, he can sense vibes, but
he doesn't automatically have information.
Because remember, Jedi can meditate and see visions, not Sith. Okay, so him finding this out, he's like, oh my god, this is a gold mine. So it's like, I got this old crusty dude, and I can replace him with this fit young person. And here's the funny part about this: Vader, this is canon. When Palpatine found out that Lord Vader, Anakin, was burning in magma, had his legs and arm cut off, he was like, okay, let's suit him up, but I'm also going to make his life hell because I don't want him to ever betray me. So let's make half of his gadgets just not work or like malfunction. And I'm not making that up. That's like his canon. Palpatine designed Vader's suit to actually be a pain in the ass. Like,
seems like a Palpatine thing to do.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be betrayed. He wants to make sure his apprentice is weak. Because if you ever see Vader, even full Vader in armor, take on anybody, he's kind of a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that really makes you wonder, what would have been like if Hayden Christensen's Anakin never, like if he won against Obi-Wan and he kept getting stronger? That's like anime level destruction, which is what it's actually hinted at in all the games that Vader's in. It's borderline anime level destruction. It's actually terrifying. Because when as Cal Kestis, remember I told you in the podcast, that game Fallen Order makes you feel like you actually became a Jedi and you earned it. When you finally face Vader, it's not a fight. It's a bitch slap. It honestly, I'll show you the video later. Because at first you're like, okay, Vader's health bar. Oh, we're fighting Vader. No, you're not. You're not really fighting Vader. Eventually, he just force grabs you and pulls you in. You resist a little bit by hitting a button, and then you like see a glow. Like the camera angle aims up a little bit to give Vader a foreboding appearance, but then you're in like a tech facility, just giving you environmental. There's a big like pipe thing above, and you see like a light glow of like, oh, this could be manipulated by the Force. So you do the prompt of pull the Force thing down on Vader, and Vader is looking directly at you, and without even missing a beat, he's just like, no. He grabs it midway and just moves it, and then he throws you. And the platform you were on, the grates, like the square grates that they're on, start like not just bending up, they start popping off like almost like reverse Tetris and flying at you, as like the ground is also cracking beneath you like Moses, and it just goes to survive, and you're running away from him as like catwalks are now going snake-like. Troopers that are shooting at you, the blaster bolts get stopped midway through and reflect and go back onto them. It's straight up like I am fighting on a completely different level. This guy is, because you just fought an Inquisitor, which I described as one of those like abducted kids.
Yeah, I remember like the Inquisitors from like the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, and you fight them, and that is a hard fight. And you like it's the same way of like, I am a Jedi Knight. I'm able to fight this Inquisitor who's also sort of a Sith Knight, right? It's that concept of the equal, right? And then you fight Vader. No, you don't. You don't actually fight Vader. He rips you a new one, okay? Because he doesn't want to outright kill you. He'll straight up say that. He's trying to capture you. That is the only reason you survive. is because he's not trying to instantly murk you, okay? And it's honestly terrifying because after all this time of playing this game, you actually do feel like you're powerful, because when you first start out, a few clone troopers is actually terrifying. And then by the time you get knighted, you have all your powers, you organically as a player have become this really awesome fighter, right? You've mastered your abilities through trials, like these temples that are based off of force powers. You have to learn your force powers. All these enemies that you've constantly fought, constantly using the Dark Souls mechanic. By the time you get to the last level, you really do feel like a knight, because it doesn't like lower the difficulty. They actually amp up the amount of enemies, and you're not afraid because you're like, actually, this isn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so by the time you face an Inquisitor, you're like, this is hard, but I faced you twice before, and this time I'm actually ready, and you kick her ass. It's an even fight, but you kick her butt, right? And then Vader shows up. And then you are immediately humbled. You're like, oh yeah, compared to the main protagonist of Star Wars, I ain't shit. I'm just another NPC. And it's a really funny feeling. And one of my favorite things to look at is reactors actually seeing, like, going through that the first time. And they're just like, never mind. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I was cool. So Palpatine made Vader weaker because he didn't want to be outdone. His systems will randomly just make noise to keep him awake. I'm not kidding. They literally they gave him an exosuit to give him sleep deprivation. The whole like breathing in and out, like that sound that's famous, is actually meant to make his breathing harder to achieve. It's all done to make his life a hell.
Labored throughout the entire thing. Yeah,
it's 100% labored. Now noted, he is actually so damaged he can't survive without a suit. Why am I doing quotes? Because he's had his suit busted. He will then use force to kind of nullify that and hold that together. And that's kind of a storyline mechanic done in filmmaking in Star Wars, that if someone is hurt, they're using force to keep going. So whatever fight they do next, they're fighting with an arm tied behind their back. People got really mad at the new movies when Rey fought Kylo Ren and won. Okay. How does she win? This is a question to you now.
Oh, because it was after Finn fought him, so he was already kind of like, well, no, because he kind of like fluckled like the way like Finn. But yeah, she just picked up the thing and was just like, no.
So is there a level of Mary Sue with her? Yeah, but not in that movie. Minus her interactions with Harrison Ford was definitely a little Mary Sue. Because
like earlier in the movie when she meets Finn, she like her weapon of choice is like a very long sword, which is like would be very similar to what Darth Maul had.
Yes, so and honestly,
it makes no sense that she knows how to wield it as like a regular saber.
Yeah, that's an issue I have. Sure, but she also is not wielding it very well.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is what I'm saying. Like I didn't actually have a problem with episode 7 as much as I did with the other ones. And here's why. Strange enough, Han Solo and Chewie being in a fight for comedic relief strangely gives you why that later fight works. So here's what happens in that movie. Han's using the same pistol he's always used to kill troopers. And then he sees Chewie using his bowcaster. And that's kind of like if a crossbow has a baby with a 50 caliber Beretta. Yeah, it hits like a truck. It really does. It's a huge amount of mass because Wookiees are strong, so they can actually tank that kickback.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So here's the thing. Han grabs it and is like, let me try this. And he shoots a trooper, and the trooper flies in the air. Right? He's eviscerated. Spoiler alert for the 7th movie. Han gets stabbed by Kylo. Chewie isn't having it.
Mm-hmm.
So he straight up shoots Kylo Ren in the stomach. Kylo's not wearing super armor. If you actually look, he's wearing essentially leather armor.
Mm-hmm.
And he takes a bowcaster round to the face, not to the face, but to the upper stomach, lower chest. He is holding himself together with the Force. That's why he actually has trouble fighting Finn, who is a soldier.
Yeah.
That's why later, after his arm gets chopped by Finn, he has trouble finding Rey, who is
Okay.
actually a gifted Force user who is fresh and not already doing 50 battles. That's why they had it to where they allied in the next movie, because if she's fresh and he's fresh and they go at each other, Kylo's going to kill her instantly.
Mhm.
They couldn't have that in the story. So that's why I say I get, like, a lot of people give that movie, episode 7, a lot of flack. There is actually combat storytelling done to actually explain that. It's just not done so well that the average person picks up on it. People that are Star Wars fans that like understanding Force abilities, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, he took a bowcaster. That's why he's having issues. Like, he straight up is like, he's laboring. Why is he laboring? He's a Force user. He's not just a Force user. He was trained by Luke. We seem to forget that.
Yeah.
And so it's not like he's like a newbie all of a sudden. No, he's kind of been through it. he's kind of having some issues right now. It's the same idea of if you're wearing bulletproof armor in real life and you get hit with a 45 round. Yes, you survived it.
It
Your
still
ribs are
takes
also
the wind
broken.
out of you. Yeah.
No, your ribs are broken. Like
Oh.
oh yeah.
Oh, it's like that much of an impact still? Oh.
I notice how I use the 45 caliber, not a 9mm or 22.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you get hit with a 45. I mean, I have armor, and technically speaking, I could survive buckshot, right? And it's light armor. It's not even
Depending on
heavy
where
armor.
it hits you.
No, period. Obviously, if I hit in the face, I'm dead. But I meant like through the armor.
Okay.
While Kylo, it's more so he had to use Force at the last second to negate some of the damage, and then he has to use Force constantly to keep himself together.
Gotcha.
And then he's also fighting a ex-soldier with a lightsaber, and he then gets cut. And he's like, oh, God. Because, I mean, he's using Force to keep himself together, so he's not all there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also kind of getting frustrated because it's like he's standing on the Death Star as it's getting blown up. And he's just like, shit, this was my job. So there's a lot happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Rey finally gets a lightsaber, which is like, yay, she got it, and she fights them and wins, people was like, oh, she instantly win because she's the main character. We're just going to Mary Sue it. She didn't earn it. I'm like, okay, this is the weird one in the movie, because in episode 8 and 9, I'm like, no, she didn't earn it. But in episode 7, I'd say she didn't need to earn it. It was a weird sense of consequences of actions that happened all around that kind of made it work. That's why I just wanted to say that during this, because that is lore technically,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a lot of gripes that people have with the new one, and that's where like people go, I didn't like how it was filmed. I don't like how it was a rehashing of episode 4. I didn't like how it was a Mary Sue, and I was like, I can actually argue against all those points.
Okay.
I'm not going to do all those now. But there is actually good reasons why these actually do work, and there is actually canon lore why some things work. Now, I will then say, her being able to do everything on the Millennium Falcon was stupid. Her being a junker and understanding a bunch of different components was fine. But she was never professionally trained, and she was a junker. She wasn't a mechanic.
And then she was telling Han Solo like how his ship worked.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It was like it was 100% Mary Sue like fantasizing,
Mm-hmm.
and that I had an issue with, and that carried over into the other movies with her Force abilities. It was never implied that she had those kind of Mary Sue Force abilities in episode 7. That's where I actually argue against that. That's where I give whoever credit to how that was done. I think that was actually done very well, to be honest. I think it was fine for her to pull a lightsaber towards her in a moment of crisis, because
She is a Force user.
she's Force sensitive, and she actually got a little bit of like sensitivity impact from Luke's old saber that she found in that other planet that they were at. So, you know, pick your poison, right? Like pick your fights of how you actually want to handle that. If you just hate the new trilogy as a whole, I can't fault you for it, because it did take away from the legend books. It really took away a lot of good stories that will never happen now. And the fact that they kind of made these movies by the seat of their pants without actually having a plan clearly shows. Now, but I also can defend some aspects of each movie. Let me rephrase that. I can defend some aspects of episode 7 and episode 8.
I haven't seen episode 9, so I guess we'll find out in a later video if I can defend it after learning.
Oh yeah, episode 9 is hard.
Probably
That's rough. I personally liked I actually liked episode 8 because I thought the idea of running away from the Empire, even though it was done in Empire Strikes Back, was fun. And I think it had fun ways to handle that. I think the side mission involving animal slaves was weird. I was like, you don't need that. You just kind of added something here in order to do something that had nothing to do with the plot. It didn't help anything. It just, that entire subsection of a storyline could have not happened and nothing would have changed. And that's when I love when critics break that down, is that when you actually go, no, it didn't change a damn thing. Then why did you do all that? Because of emotional points. Most people saw through it. So because it wasn't actually part of the plot, because it didn't change anything, it kind of lost all of its pungentness. But if you take that away and you take away the whole, I don't want to say bad take on feminism, because I actually didn't see it written that way, but some people took it that way. I really don't. Like, I really think that was okay. I think it was more so, why have arrogant officer not take advice from anyone problem, not because of sexism. I think people were trying to find something where it didn't exist because they were looking for things that were political at the time. Does that help the story? No, it was still the same problem. I just think it was just bad writing, to be honest. But how that got resolved, I think I love when Star Wars does something that's never been done before. I don't mind nostalgia, but you remember episode 8.
It was the last one I watched.
So remember when their starship that they were using, they all evacuated from it, and then she hit the hyperdrive, and but the sound design, the graphics, perfect.
The way that they split apart, and yeah,
it was perfect because it's something that has never been done, and you want to feel that impact in all the parts of it. Light, sound, action, camera angle, nailed. And I have no issue with that whatsoever. Some people are like, why didn't you do that in the beginning? I was like, because you would have to sacrifice somebody. And that was the whole point of the first actual battle, was that Leia yelled at Poe for actually sacrificing people. And so that was kind of a build up to that. It's just everything in between those two things should have been written better.
Especially because it was also used as a redemption arc at the same time.
Right, but you didn't care for the person who's being redeemed.
Yeah, like you didn't care, but you still had anger towards her that somewhat got resolved by her doing that.
So what I think actually should have done, what should have happened, take away the we're not listening to our command, the commander's not listening to advice, period, problem. Let's actually make it so they try different things and it fails. Yeah. Let's try that. And then have Poe do it. Because then he would sacrifice himself, not other people. And he would understand the idea of sacrifice, and that would just be a really good send-off to him. And then Finn would hear about it later, and that would bring him anger and bring him into the dark side a little bit. Yeah. That's how they could have played that. But hindsight's 2020, which is another project that we're doing, where I just talk about things that could have been, or things that have happened that were both better in the past or worse in the past, and that we improved upon. So Star Wars is kind of bloated. There's a lot of fiction here that is not backed by science in the slightest. Neil deGrasse Tyson has
science. I still have my last lightsaber question.
Yes,
but I do have to go to the bathroom real quick.
All right, after our quick break, we're gonna just wrap this up now. So you had a lightsaber question.
Yes. Okay. I promised you guys I was going to get to it. Anyway, so I noticed it in episode 7 first with Finn and Kylo. And then I noticed again with Kylo and Rey when they fought. So when they have their, the blue lightsaber? It's a pure beam of light.
Yes.
But Kylo's is like stringy red light. Why? Why stringy?
So, you know how I originally said some of these things are because of limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're getting into the aspect of there is no limitation. Let's try new things.
Okay.
So this was first an aesthetic choice by I'm having a blank on the actor's name, but the man who played Kylo Ren. This was his idea.
Adam Driver.
Yes.
Yeah.
So his idea was Kylo is actually this person who's constantly in torment. Why not his saber show that?
Huh.
So that was the first reason. Just like how Mace Windu's like, well, I want a purple saber, right? So same idea there on a practical level. Now let's talk lore wise. Lore wise, it's a mix between the bleeding of the crystal can make a saber act. It can flicker. It can have an odd aftertone to it, right? Like ever hear like nails on chalkboard far away?
Yeah.
It sometimes can do that. So bleeding a crystal is never pleasant because remember, Darkseid's all about violation and breaking into somebody's control. And that's why a healthy version of the dark side is being aware of it and utilizing it to the best of your ability without losing yourself, which is what Luke learned and that he trained in his temple.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just go dark, it's just breaking you to pieces. So that's the idea that they wanted to do in the crystal. Now, first it was said, oh, it's because it's the type of saber, which is the broadside.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not. It's just because of that specific style. It's because it's Kylo. It's because it's Kylo Ren. It's not actually because it's anything science based. It's both the actor and the character that is making that flickering happen. And on top of it, Adam mentioned in a different interview that he used to see like fantasy swords that were in like shops, and sometimes you would see a broadsword and they would make the metal curve like a snake sometimes. And he liked that idea of it doing more damage, of like it being almost serrated. And wouldn't that be terrifying of seeing a laser that is also serrated? And so it's that kind of like foreboding fear of like, you see a lightsaber, yeah, red's menacing. But you know what's more menacing? A laser that can barely be contained. Where it's literally like, it's almost like, yes, a nuclear reactor, it's powerful, it's scary. But all of a sudden, add an earthquake.
Yeah.
It's now terrifying. Like it's, you see, that was kind of the idea. It's like, it's all about visual aesthetic of bringing the audience into that level of dread, fear, chaotic energy. So that answers your question.
And that like honestly is like I really like that answer because like if you think about it, like he's even more like I think he's like Palpatine level because he has his like he does have his little like redemption arc where because he kills Snoke, right?
Not because of niceness.
Well, no. I know that.
Okay.
But he has this ability to like be on Rey's side and like team up with her, and he wants to do it for like his own purposes.
Yes.
Like he is like the definition of evil because like everything he did was specifically for himself.
Yeah.
So like I'm thinking like he's like Palpatine level, right?
Actually, yes. You're actually hitting the nail on the head. In fact, I hope Adam sees this one day because I remember this interview. He also doesn't like how the movies turned out.
Mm-hmm.
He tried doing his own twist because at the end when he went Jedi, he did a shrug like Han, which sounded like an homage to Han. And he's like, no, I like doing that. Like, that's like, you know, there's small things there that was like kind of fun, right? That's kind of a little dark humor because, you know, your Sith master all of a sudden going Jedi and he does this. He goes, like father, like son. I don't know what to tell you. Let's do this. Like, that's a little combat humor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what he wanted. He actually liked the idea of doing the opposite of Anakin. While Anakin had, like, this is his words, while Anakin had an arc where he was good and then went bad and then became good again, Kylo wanted
bad, good, bad.
He wanted like at his core was dark, and then Luke tried to train him and kind of did okay, and then Luke tried kill like this is why they were like Luke would have never done this. In the movies, he does this, but all the actors who were in this was like, this makes no sense. But it's your paycheck. So this is why the actors in the original trilogy, when they're in the original trilogy, could change the script. You can't change the script on Disney.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it was. This is why George Lucas wants to buy it. So let me get back to Kylo. So the idea was Kylo wanted to be bad. Luke tried to train him, and then he was like, this isn't working, and then just go full bad and be the antithesis of the Jedi again to kind of rebalance the Force, because now Rey's coming into the picture. And so you need a complete opposite of like good. You need Kylo to be this aspect of him kind of slowly. And he wanted his saber actually to go from chaotic to like solid, but then to have a edge like a katana, which would have looked so cool. That would have looked so cool.
I love that idea.
But they screwed it up.
Disney.
Yeah, no, damn it, Disney is 100% the proper response. Like, that's why a lot of actors and workers who worked with Disney left for many projects. Like a lot of things they kept on screwing the pooch, and they had very bad excuses as to why. And I'm not going to go into that. That's for a podcast, but that's kind of why you don't see. That's why a lot of the projects that happened after Episode 9 didn't go very well. Even the Obi-Wan show lost a lot of their original creators. And you could tell the only time that show was at its peak was at the end when Obi faced Hayden. Mm-hmm. And they actually like had interviews about that, of it was a accidentally perfectly shot scene because of how the lightsabers reflected on their faces and how the sound design was handled. When Vader's mask got chopped a little bit, you could hear Hayden crack through, but then also Vader would overtake it, and then Hayden would crack through, all in the same sentences. Mm-hmm. And so it just sounded really cool, like the two were almost fighting against each other, but at the same time not.
Yeah.
And it also did allow the story of Obi-Wan to finalize how he felt about Vader and be at peace with it. Wow, if you watch the Clone Wars, you actually get to see Obi-Wan right when he becomes Ben, and he actually, can I spoil it?
Yeah.
He finally kills Darth Maul.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful. It's actually done the most samurai movie way. Mm-hmm. The idea of actual like katana work was that you should be able to finish a fight in one move, right? That's literally the style. Mm-hmm. So I want you to think back, and you can look this up sometime too, but think back to when Qui-Gon Jinn was facing Darth Maul. What was Qui-Gon Jinn's style?
Well, he did. Oh, yeah, because
this, right?
That's right, because it was Obi-Wan that double wielded. Because, right?
No, that was Hayden. I'm talking about the episode 1.
Yeah.
So, no, Obi-Wan had that style.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon did this. Okay, so why do I bring that up? Because Maul has always used the double saber. Mm-hmm. So this is now Obi-Wan, old man Obi-Wan. Like this is like, I am being close to being Ben Kenobi at this point. All right. And he knows he needs to kill Maul, because Maul is now going, why are you out here? There's someone out here that's important, Luke. And so he's like, Obi-Wan's like, okay, well now you can't leave. And so what he does is that when they first draw swords, he goes into his original stance and he goes, wait, no, that was wrong. That's Obi-Wan. That's the guy who made the mistakes. That's the guy who always made things worse. Let's actually do this properly. I'm using my pipe as the sword, by the way. I think it's great. And so he goes into more of a traditional stance, which you actually see Ben do in episode 4, right? And then he actually goes, you know what? Let's actually see if I can actually trick Maul. Let's see if it's hubris. He'll recreate the same move. And so he goes into Qui-Gon's stance in order to make Darth Maul do the same move, which is slash, back, bunt up. I just hit the mic. bunt up, hit the face, and then go backwards and cut and like stab into the chest,
Mhm.
right?
But it
So
was like a
Obi-Wan-
fake out.
Obi-Wan does a fake out and does a perfect slice down, and it's not graphic, but it's a beautiful representation because it's a fight at night in the desert, and that one slice cuts the saber in half, like Darth Maul's saber in half. The saber deactivates because Maul is now done. Like he's like, I'm dying, and then he like lays down, and like for 2 seconds he goes, "Oh, this isn't some desert rat." And I'm quoting Sam here. This isn't some desert rat. This is a Jedi Master. This is actually someone who's very wise. And I overthought it. I actually did not take it seriously. And there's something really important here. And his dying words is essentially, is this who you're defending is the chosen one, isn't it? The actual chosen one, not Vader. And it's Maul, even though even though Obi-Wan hates Maul with a passion, he's still a Jedi. He doesn't actually hate him. But I gotta think, this dude has been a thorn in his side forever and also killed his love interest. Not a fan. Also killed his master. Not a fan. But in that moment, they did a great job of also animating Maul's face, of showing, yeah, I'm dying. I am actually at peace. I am actually not your enemy at this point. And the Jedi Master actually, almost like Assassin's Creed, like respects him and actually goes, yeah, you're right. It's the chosen one. Let me lay you to rest. The fight is over. You can finally sleep. It's actually beautiful send-off of showing how mature Ben has actually become and why he was able to actually do everything he did as an old man for Luke.
Okay.
It's a perfect send-off. It's the last episode of Clone Wars, by the way. I mean, perfect. So
you're talking about like the 3D Clone Wars,
yes.
not the drawn. Okay.
No, the drawing one literally ends at the beginning of episode 3.
Okay.
While the Clone Wars covers different arcs and different mediums jumping around in time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there's internet lists to actually figure out which way to watch them depending on what you want to see. Right? Because there's completely useless episodes that's just for fodder for kids to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
While the cartoon, there is no such thing. They're all important because there's only a few episodes.
Gotcha.
So that's Star Wars lore in a nutshell. Like it just for the main, because it's just the main arc and like what's a little before and what's a little after, because that all ties together. But there's stuff that happens way after with, the rise of the Sith again. There's with the night. There's also like way in the past, which is the Old Republic, and we can go even further than that into the Jedi Sith Wars. We can go even further than that to the beginning of the actual colonization. There's so much that's actually in there that's not covered very well, and it's more of pieced together through comics and books. There's rumors that a Old Republic show or movie is in the works. There's also a rumor that Samuel L. Jackson wants to be like, I want to do a what if Mace Windu survived and actually went to town on people.
I love the what ifs.
I love the what ifs too. But the problem with that is that you can never say they're canon. But I mean, at that point, are you trying to enjoy?
Still got the content.
Yeah, exactly. It's all for enjoyment. If you're really only for like, that's not lore. Well, now you're becoming that like, actually, stereotype that everyone thinks about when they think like negatively on nerds and geeks.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody, that's Star Wars. Alex, do you have any more questions?
Just one, because it kind of like popped in my head when you were talking about Obi-Wan about something. When Luke sees old man Ben get killed, he's not actually killed.
No, he is.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's a Jedi ability, is that upon death, you become so at peace that you become a Force ghost.
Okay, because like he just disappears, and I thought he just did like some like cool teleport thing. So he
He's
just
dead.
died. Oh.
That was him literally going, okay, Anakin.
Oh.
He warned him. He literally warned him, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. That was not a lightly said line. That was very intentional.
Okay. Damn.
That's why he can talk to Luke while Luke is focusing. That's why he
He's
appears
a
as the Force
fucking
Ghost in episode 5.
ghost. Okay.
And
That makes
actually,
sense.
if you watch the Obi-Wan show, actually no, this is actually in episode 3. At the end of episode 3, Yoda talks to Obi-Wan and goes, "I was able to talk to an old friend, your old master." And he goes, "Qui-Gon." It's like,
Qui-Gon.
"I will teach you how to speak with him." And so the Force Ghost ability is new
Oh.
in canon of like the world of Star Wars on the timeline.
Oh, okay. So like they didn't know that was a thing that they could do?
No.
So Qui-Gon is the first one.
Yes.
That's wild.
That's why it was like, you got to understand, like, if you actually understand and go into the lore and the dialogue on all the stuff of Star Wars, he was revered. Like, his master, who is a Sith, straight up was like, "God, I wish Qui-Gon was around." Because Dooku wasn't trying to start World War III. He honestly just wanted the Separatists to win and for the Sith to have a place in the world. And he thought Qui-Gon was so at peace and so balanced that he would be like, "Nope, I actually see how this could work. We don't need bloodshed." Like like everyone revered him. Sidious straight up was afraid of him.
Oh.
The only reason Qui-Gon got killed by Maul is because Qui-Gon had his thoughts in 3 different places.
Because I was gonna ask, I was like, so then does that say something for Obi-Wan that he was able to defeat Maul when
Obi-Wan was able to defeat Maul because Obi-Wan in his own, so there's 2 things there. It's Maul's hubris. If you watch the final stroke, it was Maul being like, "I got this," and Obi-Wan actually, like, at first Obi is channeling a little dark. If you actually look at it, like, he's moving. And fun fact about that fight, they actually had to slow down the cameras because they're moving too fast in real life. Yeah, while the other fights, they have to speed them up.
I love that.
That's how impressive these actors are. So no, he actually does channel a little dark, just like you would if
you said that was like the animated one that you're talking about.
This is episode 1.
No.
This is the movie episode 1.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
when Qui-Gon's fighting Darth Maul.
When Qui-Gon's fighting Darth Maul, his mind is in 2 different places at once. Technically
No,
3.
I was talking about like the slowing down and speeding up, like the actual cameras.
Yeah, that whole fight, the whole fight of the 2 Jedi versus the 1 Sith, that was all had to be slowed down. They were moving too fast.
Oh,
yeah,
that's wild. I love that.
Right, and that was young Liam Neeson and Ian McGregor and the guy who was playing Darth Maul at the time. And I'm sorry, I got their name. I forgot your name, dude. But like they were going so fast, they had to slow down the cameras. Yeah,
I love that.
All other sword fights that happened, other than when Hayden Christensen was going against Ian McGregor in episode 3, that one they slowed down too, because that was the best sword fighting they could do at the time, and that was at their peak. But episode 2, they also sped them up, not slowed them down, because that was also Sir Christopher Lee was Count Dooku's actor.
Yeah.
So he has a gentleman fencing style about him. And they had to speed. Yeah, they had to fight at a slower pace. The actors had to fight at a slower pace, and they sped up the film. But when it's whatever it was Hayden Christensen or Ian McGregor, they like, we gotta slow this shit down. You can't really tell what's going on, guys.
Which is crazy because like he did his own like tricks, like the like behind the back, like he's famous for that.
That was all them.
Yeah.
And Lucas was ecstatic. Like you could see, like watching him, he's smiling like a little kid. He's like, "This is so cool."
I mean, I imagine so. It's like watching like your literal dreams coming to light
with talented actors that are not just bringing it to life, but also like really doing the work. Like they are. Okay, let me explain this. They were so good when they were fighting. They would have multiple saber props because they kept bending them.
Mm-hmm. Like they were just as excited to do it as he was to see it.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why people like, wonder, and it's kind of the joke Liam Neeson's always revered, but no, Qui-Gon was actually in lore canon. No one wanted him to die. Like Sidious only wanted him to die because he's like, I'm going to have to deal with this eventually.
He would get in his way.
Yeah, like no matter what, he like Order 66 would not have happened with Qui-Gon. Like straight up. Qui-Gon was not the best fighter, but he was like Yoda when it comes to just sensing things. Like he was just wise and very in tune with everything. he wasn't like focused on fighting like a young Padawan. And there were some knights and masters that just focus on fighting, not as a means of aggression, but just that's their natural talent. Not going to bash them for it. That wasn't Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon was very much in tune with everything and tried to resolve things as peaceful as possible. He literally was the best negotiator in the entire Jedi Order for a reason. So why would you think of it this way? Jedi Knights get sent to basic disputes. This is an entire space blockade on a planet.
But they send him and Obi-Wan to take care of.
Exactly. They're like, yeah, they got it. They completely got it. And so when the Jedi hear, oh crap, that really went sideways, they were generally surprised because it didn't make sense for the Trade Federation to betray the Jedi. They're generally cowards. And so that's when you get the vibe like something's not right. And then you find out later Sidious is actually pulling the strings and he's literally blackmailing them with death, that they have to do this. So, because, I mean, think of it this way. You live in a world where it's all technology, robotics, all this stuff. And then you hear that there's like people that can see in the future, move faster than normal, move objects through their mind. And you're like, okay, that's terrifying, but they don't strike out of anger. They're just kind of the police and they don't aggressive. And then you find out there's an evil cult version of that also uses the powers to terrify you, to electrocute you, to break your bones inside of your chest with a flick of their finger. And both of them are looking directly at you going, you will do this. Yeah, that's why they did that. It wasn't because it was profitable. They were just kind of screwed. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you'll have questions as we do more lore because they'll jump back.
We'll get into more stuff.
So this will be part 1 of Star Wars, its core video, which we got around 3 hours because we got to cut a little bit here and there. But, oh my goodness, it's been a lot of fun.
It has. It's been 3 hours of recording, but we've been chatting for going on like over 4 hours now.
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse. What can I say? That's why I wanted to go into this career. It's because I knew I could do it, and not as I'm awesome, but it's just
he talks a lot.
It's my programming. I'm a clone. I'm programmed to do this. But yeah, no, I mean, I do talk a lot. I've been learning to cap it, sort of. But anyway,
it's for what we do.
Yeah, hopefully we can actually make this a career.
If at some point we'll get there.
We'll get there eventually. Not without you guys.
Mm.
We need you. So this is not a please do this for me, but we are kind of starting fresh. So anyone who can actually not just like and subscribe, but also even if you just mention it to somebody else, even if you could share it, if you could actually spread it using your own social media, I'd be very grateful. Or just leave a comment. Tell us something, add something, give us a fact, tell us your favorite scene, or ask a question.
Engagement is incredible, and it still helps regardless.
Oh, yeah. I will respond to all comments. Please do. All right, everyone. I am ready for bed. Not really, but sure.
I am too. I work tomorrow.
Oh, well, that's I actually get weekends off. Finally. First job I get that in forever. All right. Well, everybody, I can't wait to do this again. Till next time, this has been a lore dump, but a Mousepad production. You'll see in the credits. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Bye.
A Mousepad production. Please like and subscribe. Our links are in the description of this content. Thank you.